Our manhwa starts with an apocalyptic setting. Lots of monsters are rushing towards a group of people, who seem to be preparing for their arrival. Alongside all the monsters seems to also be the king of the dragons, Gorntail, a huge three-headed dragon. The white-haired woman declares that the centaur's nest has fallen, and they cannot depend on anyone else. The Cygnus Knights, the Resistance, the Cross Hunters, all the adventurers and the people's ray of hope, the 6 heroes are all dead. The protagonist, El Palm, is the last adventurer. This small group of people, sitting on this cliff, are the last hope for humanity. After a gruesome battle, the protagonist, El Palm, is the last one standing. He managed to slay one of the dragon's heads, but looking at the sky, where the enormous Gorntail was still flying, with 2 out of 3 heads still intact, the protagonist started to realize that this is the end for him. The king of the dragons started to regenerate its head. Everything seems to have been for nothing, and this is the end of the world and the end of the adventure. The protagonist, full of frustration and anger, even if everything is futile, wasn't ready to just give up. Philip, Jaden, Alexis and many other people sacrificed their lives for this. This cannot be the end. El Palm, the protagonist, decided that this cannot be end. Got up and prepared one last attack. But it was already too much for his worn-out body. The attack charge-up failed and he has injured. The Dragon King charged up his own attack and fired upon the protagonist. Recognizing this as his last moment, the last adventurer was filled with regret. If he was more powerful, if he had one more chance. El Palm woke up, in a lot of confusion. A man in front of him, who just threw water at him, was screaming at him to stop acting like he was sick. As a slave, he should show more respect. The protagonist was shocked by the fact that he was still alive, but he started to realize where he is. This was the slave market, which is supposed to have been abolished a couple of years ago. Looking again at the man in front of him, El Palm recognized him as the merchant who was in charge of him, 6 years ago. So, he was sent back in time. This cannot be a dream. A couple of people showed up in front of his cell. The man, which seems to be a merchant, presented the protagonist as a slave that can be used as bait. The white-haired man who was with the merchant stated that he will buy the 2 slaves in the cell. Unfazed by the fact that he was sold as a slave, the protagonist decided that this is his chance to change everything. A while later, the protagonist picked from the ground a staff that can use the ability Fire Arrow. A good ability for his current level, thought El Palm. But this is not enough. He needs more items if he wants to be an adventurer again. Noticing the boot of a dead person, he remembered that some people hide their valuables in their footwear. Upon inspection, he found a ring that holds the telekinesis ability. Then, all of a sudden, he got surrounded by monsters. They charged at the protagonist from all directions. He defended himself with his spear, but one of the monsters attacked with their tongue. Trying to defend himself, the spear got destroyed. El Palm was left defenseless, but only for a short moment. In a fraction of a second, he used his staff and cast Fire Arrow, then with the help of his telekinesis ring, he managed to pierce all the monsters that have encircled him. There were still plenty of monsters left. Then the protagonist tried to use again the Fire Arrow ability of his new staff, but it didn't work. He realized that the ability has to be on cooldown. He had no choice but to use the staff to bash the monsters away. After holding the enemies away by bashing and kicking, the Fire Arrow ability became available again. Using again the same abilities, Fire Arrow and Telekinesis, he managed to kill all the monsters. Standing in the middle of the burning corpses of the monsters that attacked him, the protagonist heard a voice. It was one of the people that used him as bait. The survivor stated that the protagonist couldn't have been a normal slave, as he was able to use a spear as well as magic. The survivor asked where did he get the staff and how did he awaken as a slave. Did the protagonist plan to kill everyone from the start? Annoyed by the questions of the survivor, the protagonist answered that this wasn't planned. He killed all of them because he absolutely hates people that use slaves as bait. Then he finished the job. Somewhere in a city, during the day, the people were surprised that the protagonist, a bait slave, managed to return back without his masters. El Palm, the protagonist, was thinking that now he needs to move fast in order to avoid repeating the same fate, so the first thing that he needed to do was to free himself. Sometime later, inside the Merchants Union building, two people were discussing the fact that a slave returned alone. The man sitting, Mr. Abbeys, was receiving a briefing about how a slave returned without any scratches, while the adventurers that accompanied him died. Mr. Abbeys found this situation very unusual, and even more surprising is the fact that slaves which are used as bait cannot escape their fates. Only through death they can regain their freedom. Mr. Abbeys asked his attendant why has him reported this incident. To which, the man in front of him answered that this slave unlocked the first circle. Hearing this, Mr. Abbeys became worried and started thinking that usually slaves harbor negative sentiments towards the merchant union, which could be dangerous. The attendant had more to add. He continued saying that the slave requested a change in his contract. For the slave to register as an adventurer. This information shocked Mr. Abbeys. The attendant continued saying that Mr. Rakan requested Mr. Abbeys to look into this matter. Hearing this, Mr. Abbeys started to question why an executive of the Gaffer Merchant Union would be interested in a lowly slave. Then, looking at a pile of books next to him, thought that it might have to do with a certain situation. Humans have always been slaves to money. If they borrow money and fail to pay the debt, they have to make up through hard labor. On the day that Elpom's father collapsed because of an illness, he became a slave. Elpom purchased a herb called black moss in order to help with his father's illness. The herb was purchased on credit from the Gaffer Merchant Union. Because the union set the price of the herb at a really high rate, the protagonist was unable to pay the money back, and he was sentenced to become a slave in order for the merchant union to recover their money. This way, the protagonist was exploited for 6 years by the union. But now it's time for revenge. Elpom presented himself in front of Mr. Abbeys, the left-hand man of Rakan. Abbeys admitted that he heard about the protagonist's request to become an adventurer, to which he agrees, but he can only make him an F-rank adventurer. Elpom, surprised by the fact that his request was accepted easily, he thanked Abbeys and requested the E rank, thinking that he doesn't want to play along with the union. Abbeys responded that the Adventurers Association didn't even assign him a rank. Elpom continued that he has a lot of experience as a baiting slave, to which Abbeys added that this type of experience is not valid because he didn't hunt any monsters. Elpom stated that being an adventurer has nothing to do with hunting monsters, as the first adventurer made a name for himself by surviving. Returning alive is the true objective of an adventurer. Mr. Abbeys stated that he somewhat agrees to what Elpom said, but he also added that you cannot clear a dungeon with only survival skills. The merchant union is not full of idiots who would offer a risky contract to someone who will die before paying of their debt. Not ready to give up, Elpom proposed to join the raid on the gate with 12 scars. Abbeys stated that at least 12 parties died trying to raid that gate, but if the protagonist can prove himself in this raid, then he will do whatever he wants. Later, in the forest, the protagonist met with the group of adventurers he was supposed the 12 scars gate. The leader of the group presented himself as Chev, the tank of the party. He stated that Mr. Abbeys already informed them that Elpom used to be a baiting slave, and that they all have no problem with this. The protagonist told them that he hopes they can all work together well. Chev continued by asking if the protagonist is a fire mage, to which he got a positive answer. Another member of the party also asked if it's already decided on the elemental magic that he can use. To which Chev added that he heard that mages can only use the elemental magic they were born with, and that items that unrelated to the magical element of the mage are useless to them. The other member of the party, hearing all this, stated that this all seems to be too complicated. Chev decided to end the subject about mages and informed the protagonist about their mission. The goal is not to hunt monsters, but to recover the items left behind by the 12 parties who were annihilated in the raid. Returning the items to the Union will earn them 3,000 meso for each piece of recovered equipment. The dark-skinned adventurer started complaining that if they don't recover any item, then they won't make any money, and that the Union is not being fair. Another member of the group answered that he should stop complaining. The leader of the group ordered everyone to stop arguing and to advance forward into the forest so they can start making some money. Later, deeper inside the forest, the group stopped and the leader, Chev, told everyone that they should set a camp in that area, as later they might have to engage into fights with monsters. One of the team members suggested one of the trees as their base, as the tree has large branches that expand towards other trees in the area, making it easy to set up a base. After Chev gave his approval to build the base in the mentioned tree, the dark-skinned adventurer approached Palm and told him to rest, while him, and pointing at another one of his teammates, referring to him as an idiot, will set up the base, as it is their specialty. After the base was built, the team of adventurers decided to split into 2 teams and scout the surrounding area. Tom, Max and Roa will be Group 1 while Chev and Palm will be Group 2. Each team will scout the designated area and then return to base. If anything happens, the groups have to send a signal and then immediately return to base. In Group 2, Chev started saying that weird how they didn't any monsters or any of the items left behind by the previous team. He also said that maybe they need to go deeper into the forest. Then, he changed the subject and asked the protagonist how does he feel during his first mission as an adventurer. Palm answered that he feels nervous. With an empathetic spirit, Chev stated that he understands that. He's been an adventurer for a long time, and he still feels nervous before every mission, but maybe that's because he is a scaredy cat. But because he has really good people by his side, he gets courage. He then continued by saying that he got very sad when he heard that Palm was a former slave bait, and that he cannot even imagine what he went through. He then wanted to make a proposition to join his team, but then noticed that the protagonist got distracted by a track created by a monster and said that he wasn't serious about the proposition and to ignore it. A bit later, after the team reunited at the base, while they were eating, some members of the group were talking about the possibility of not finding any items. Chev, bothered by the conversation, told everyone to stop talking about work while eating, and to worry about the items tomorrow. Late in the night, when everyone was supposed to be sleeping, Chev, holding a torch, was asking Palm, who was sleeping with his blanket over himself, if he's sleeping, to which he received no answer. The dark-skinned teammate, with a malicious tone, stated that Chev is being too careful. There is no way that Palm is awake after he ate the food spiked with a sleeping herb capable of knocking out a much bigger prey. Now they will be able to sell his fire arrow wand which is worth at least 10,000 meso. The dark-skinned adventurer approached the sleeping Palm and raised his knife then stabbed. But, something was wrong. Didn't feel like the body of a person. The group of adventurers were tricked. They were confused, how could they have been tricked like this? Then, Chev, the leader, ordered everyone to look for the protagonist. Right in that moment, the base exploded, adding more confusion to the entire situation. The adventurers started to think that this might be the work of Palm, when a huge monster showed up in front of them. Chev, facing the huge apparition, realized that the protagonist used them as bait. The adventurers were forced to immediately abandon the base as well as all their equipment in order to escape the monster's attack. While watching the base getting destroyed, Palm, sighting far away, was thinking that if the group of adventurers were thinking of tricking him, they shouldn't have acted nicely towards him. There is no way that they would welcome a former slave bait like that in a gate where 12 veteran parties failed. It was clear that the adventurers were up to something. The big yellow monster seems to be the boss of this area. Palm had a hunch that this was the boss monster because of the tracks he found, but he didn't expect it to be this big. While running as fast as he could, Chev told his team that this type of monster is really hard for them to fight against. One of the adventurers asked his team leader if he knows what type of monster is it. Chev answered that it's a gold slime, something uncommon in the maple world, a rare monster that shows up in red gates. Its body is made out of acid, which makes it the worst matchup against a team of adventurers like them, which are all melee fighters. But the worst part is... But he couldn't finish his sentence because the monster shot a beam of acid, which the adventurers were barely able to avoid. They were all surprised by the abilities of the slime. Chev explained that the attack was an acid arrow. The monster was way too strong. But they didn't have time to rest, the slime kept chasing them. One of the adventurers asked how could they defeat it, to which Chev answered that first they should escape it and that its acid arrow has a cooldown of a minute, which should be enough time to get away from it. Then they should recover and make a plan to destroy the core in the monster's head. Upon hearing about the skill cooldown, Max, the dark-skinned adventurer, decided to charge towards the golden slime. Chev opposed to the idea, as they would have better chances if they attacked together. But it was too late, Max was already split in half by the monster's powerful ability. Chev couldn't believe it as the cooldown time wasn't over. There was still time left. In that moment, the slime used its ability again and all the adventurers were defeated. Only the protagonist was left. He is thinking about what Chev said before he died. The gold slimes probably ate lots of items and grew stronger. This way, the cooldown time decreased. Now it makes sense how the previous parties weren't able to succeed in this raid. Its abnormal size and non-existent cooldown time makes it way too dangerous. This monster grew to the level of a creature that could be found in a yellow gate, which is 2 levels above a red gate. This is not a monster that can be handled by a one-circle adventurer like himself. There doesn't seem to be any more items left in this dungeon, which means that the mission is a fail. Then, he remembered how Abby's asked him to prove himself. El Palm wasn't ready to give up yet. He attacked the monster with his fire arrow. But that didn't do much damage, making the protagonist to think that the slime's magical resistance could be really high. Seeing the damage, he predicted that 4 more shots could be enough to reach and destroy the core. Maybe 5 shots. With a lot of confidence in his eyes, the protagonist decided that he will prove that he can become an adventurer. The golden slime launched an acid arrow towards the palm, but he managed to dodge it. The slime continued launching more acid arrows, but the result was similar. The protagonist evaded all of them. Using his telekinesis ring as well as a rope and a knife, he was able to evade the countless acid arrows launched towards him. While this was happening, he was thinking that he needs to hit the exact same spot with all his shots in order to kill the monster, but this is not something easy to do for a mage. It's good that he is not an ordinary mage, as he was known in his previous life as the best telekinetic. He then used his fire arrow staff and hit the slime in the same spot. For more shots. But the monster was shooting back. The protagonist chanted his spell, fire arrow, and hit the monster again. 3 more shots. After a bit more dodging, he shot another fire arrow which hit the same spot. 2 more shots. Another arrow was shot, but the slime dodged it. For a monster of its size, it's quite quick, but dodging is useless because the protagonist is using telekinesis to maneuver his fire arrows. 1 more shot. The core was uncovered. This was the protagonist's chance to end this fight. 1 last shot, but the slime was also ready to launch an attack of its own. The slime's hand was closing in faster than El Palm's attack. But he had a plan. Using his telekinesis ring and makeshift grappling hook, he evaded the attack and then launched a fire arrow. The slime to block the arrow, but the protagonist used his telekinesis ability once again and manipulated the arrow's path straight towards the monster's core. Direct hit and the slime exploded. In order to not get caught by the exploding acid, the protagonist used again his telekinesis and grappling hook in order to escape. After the acid dissipated, Palm checked the area where the slime was slain. He found a red orb which he absorbed. The protagonist returned at the Union and was in front of Mr. Abbeys, who was surprised by his return. Abbeys asked why he returned alone and without the items he was commissioned for. Palm answered that the adventurers that were brought into his team were up to no good newbies who wanted to steal his weapons. After he left in order to avoid them, the hired adventurers were attacked by the monster and all died. Abbeys asked what monster and Palm answered that it was a gold slime. Then Abbeys realized that all the items were melted by the slime. This angered him. All the items that were rented by the merchant union were destroyed. This is a huge loss. Also, the fact that El Palm returned alive is also a problem. Gates have a couple of rules. First, the number marked on the gate's pillar represents the amount of people that can enter a gate. The gate will be deactivated after the specified number of people enter and will only reactivate after those adventurers are annihilated. Second, there are limitations based on the gate's difficulty level, which is portrayed by the color, ranging from red to purple. Adventurers with a higher number of circles cannot enter a gate of lower difficulty level. Third, each gate can be raided only once. If one of the people who entered survives and comes out, then the gate is destroyed. Abbeys knew very well these rules and realized that the gate is lost and a gold slime is way too difficult of an opponent for first circles. He then told the protagonist that he understands how he was the only survivor and because the items were melted then there was no way to recover them. But this means that the mission was failed. Then Palm interjected that Abby's is lacking patience because he didn't finish his explanation. Then he raised his arm and said that he ate the gold slime. This shocked Abby's. He couldn't believe the fact that the protagonist was already at the second circle level. Palm continued by saying that he proved himself with this and wants A rank. Abby's answered that he will give him D rank and if he works with him, he will be treated like a C rank. While the protagonist was signing the promised contract, Abby's was thinking that giving someone who isn't a third circle C rank is excessive as ranks are influenced by circles. The difference between circle number is significant. But Palm is not a normal person. You cannot gain a second circle just by absorbing a mana stone. He has survival instincts and lots of talent. He just became a first circle and came back a second circle. This is a huge opportunity. Seeing how happy Mr. Abby's was now, Palm was thinking that his treatment much faster than expected. But there's little time left until the first 100-member Red Gate will show up. This is a huge event that both the Merchant Union and guilds followed closely. It happened around this time and the Gaffer Merchant Union will also be interested. The protagonist was also thinking that there is no issue if things advance faster as he is also in a rush as it could be a good thing to advance his plans. He then addressed Abby's and asked for money. There are people that are saying that the gates started the Age of Adventure, but it was actually a trap created by the Black Magician. Many adventurers died in the gates, killing the future potential of the Maple World. 3 years of now, the monsters that bided their time, will come rushing through the gates and humanity will lose. Palm left the Union's building and was thinking that the money that he got isn't enough but it should be enough. The 100-member gate is a red level so only adventurers who have 2 circles or less can enter. Usually the Gaffer Merchant Union prefers to invest into high-level adventurers, but because they are aiming for the 100-member gate, an investment into a 2-circle adventurer is a good idea for them. Even if he has some money now, the protagonist is thinking that spending them on items would be foolish, as items for someone of his level are too expensive. There is something else more useful that he could use his money for. A slaver welcomed the protagonist to the Lithus slave market and offered to be his guide. He then asked what type of slave does Palm want? Dungeon bait or a warrior to fight alongside? The protagonist answered that he is looking for someone, which left the slaver surprised. He then led the way to the punishment ward, explaining that this is the place where the slaves are punished for having a bad behavior, just like the person that the protagonist is looking for. The slaver showed him the slave in question and asked if Palm is sure that this is the person that he is looking for, receiving a positive answer immediately. This is the one he was looking for. The death of a certain hero sped up the end of the Maple World. And the name of this hero was Aaron, the polearm hero. The first and last disciple of Aaron was this slave, Dibo, the hero killer. Looking at the protagonist, Dibo asked if he came for him, then said that he doesn't know him and he should get lost. The slaver apologized for Dibo's behavior with the excuse that his mental health is not the best. Palm was thinking that Dibo is way too rude because of his behavior, but he is really skillful and he used to be one of the people who gained attention after the last day in the previous life. Dibo was often compared with Palm because they both came from the same region, awakened at around the same time and also had similar skills. The protagonist asked Dibo how much does he cost, to which he answered that Palm looks like a young master from a rich family and asked for 1,000,000 meso in payment. The protagonist remembered another similarity between him and Dibo, and that was the fact that they were both in a dire need of money. Dibo had a sister which was suffering from the black blood disease. Dibo, in a rude tone, said that the protagonist should show them money or get lost. Palm showed the money, 1,000,000 meso, which surprised both Dibo and the slaver. Then, he stated the conditions of the contract. The partnership will last for a year, profits will be split 70 to 30 and Palm has priority in the choice of the items that drop from the gate. Upon receiving the contract, Dibo immediately signed it, making the protagonist think that the reason for signing that fast must be because his sister's life is on the line. Because the contract is already signed, Palm stated that they will head straight to the gate, and Dibo accepted. On their way to the gate, Dibo told Palm that he is grateful for the weapon but he usually uses a long sword, and asked to go back in order to change the weapon. To which, the protagonist answered that while working with him, he has to use a polearm, and if he doesn't like it, they could end the contract. Dibo didn't like the answer but he had no choice but to accept. Once arrived at the gate, an 8-member red gate with 1 scar, Dibo asked where is the rest of the party. The party should be a strong one and should also have a healer because young master's pockets are deep. Palm answered that there is no worry, they can easily handle this gate because he has the perfect party, pointing at Dibo. This left Dibo without words, and before he could protest against the idea of entering an 8-member gate with only 2 people, the protagonist pushed him into the gate. After arriving at their destination, Dibo started to scream that Palm is crazy for entering with only 2 people inside this gate and to not take a red gate as a joke. Plus he is not even using his type of preferred weapon. Then, from behind, a lot of dust started to rise into the air. It was a horde of monsters called stumps. Dibo realized that his screaming attracted the stumps towards their direction. These monsters are knows because of their tough bark which swords and spears struggle to pierce, plus, there are too many of them. Palm brushed past him and then cast fire arrow, killing all the stumps. He then told Dibo that he is disappointed with his behavior and to not repeat this mistake. Dibo couldn't believe how powerful was the protagonist. In another location, a woman was presenting her report to the master, saying that the merchants took the bait. They picked the people to send out but they are still working on a time for the plan. They asked for permission to proceed. After the white-haired master offered the approval, the woman disappeared, and he stated that freedom to the Maple World will be achieved through a certain person's will. The stumps were burning on the ground, all dead. Dibo reported that he managed to gather 27 mana stones and without any care for it, El Palm said that they can go now, and so, the 2 men started traveling through the hot desert, looking for their next target. Looking at the protagonist, Dibo was thinking that he misjudged him. He may seem crazy but his skills are amazing. Who else can manipulate a fire arrow like that? He was also thinking that this is a great opportunity to make lots of money. Then, Palm announced that they found it. Another group of stumps. After counting them, Dibo reported that they are 9 of them and the protagonist declared that is the perfect number, which made the polearm user wonder why 9 is a perfect number. Looking at Palm, he finally realized what's next. The first attack was a surprise one from above. The power was enough to split the monster in half. But the rest of the stumps got alerted and rushed towards Dibo, who was cursing at the fact that he has to fight with all of the monsters alone. He also has to use a weapon that he is not familiar with, which was really annoying. Watching from the sidelines, the protagonist was thinking that Dibo is a bit awkward with the polearm, but soon enough he will understand that it's the best weapon for him. After all, the polearm hero recognized the talent in Dibo and made him her sole student. While swinging at the monsters, Dibo was finally starting to understand the advantages of using the polearm. It has a good reach, is powerful, and it feels even more comfortable than a sword. After he relaxed and stared to wield it more gently, he got better at using it. Looking at him, the protagonist was impressed by how fast he managed to get a hang of the polearm. He didn't even awaken a circle yet, but he is already really good. Then the ground started to shake, which made Dibo think that it's an earthquake, but a thick root bursted out of the hard rock and almost hit him. It was a big monster that looks like a tree, a stumpy. The big size of the creature left the polearm user stunned. Luckily, El Palm moved fast and took Dibo out of harm's way, and declared that he will handle the monster, as its big size makes it easier to hit. He fired a magic arrow and hit the monster. But the stumpy blocked it. No damage was dealt. He fired another arrow, and used telekinesis on it, in order to make it hard to block. But again, the monster blocked it. Magic seems to not work on it, so the 2 men had no choice but to run as fast as they could. Dibo was screaming at the protagonist to run faster if he doesn't want to die. But he was thinking that magic definitely works against the monster, otherwise he wouldn't block the attacks. The real problem are the branches that protect the tree from all sides. The monster got close enough to launch an attack, then it swung a thick branch towards the men, but Palm was thinking fast, so using his telekinesis, he took the rock under their feet and used it to get themselves out of harm's way. Dibo was impressed by his employer's quick thinking and thanked for saving him, but they weren't safe yet. Now they were between a bunch of stumps and the big Stumpy. The protagonist told the polearm user to take care of the small monsters while he deals with the big one. Palm rushed towards his enemy and launched a fire arrow. It exploded right before reaching the monster. But another one was right behind it and it hit, grazing the creature's face. Dibo was impressed. After thinking that it's impossible to defeat such a monster, now he had a hope. While launching another attack, El Palm was thinking that the tree's branches are too fast, and telekinesis is not enough to steer the arrow through the gaps. But now that he has a second circle, he can conjure magic 2 times. The monster was hit again, destroying one of his main branches. While trying to deal with his own problems, Dibo was impressed by the protagonist's idea of launching 2 arrows, one after the other. No matter how fast he moves, he cannot block 2 consecutive attacks. His employer is truly a bigger monster than the one in front of him. Because Dibo was doing more admiring than killing, a bunch of stumps surrounded the protagonist. But they were nothing for the second circle adventurer, who used his fire arrow in combination with telekinesis in order to quickly kill all of them. In a disappointed tone, Palm asked Dibo why can't he at least deal with the small monsters. At that moment, the Stumpy took advantage of the fact that the protagonist was distracted and launched an attack. He avoided the first, but then came the second, which seemed to be too fast to avoid. Dibo was able to react fast enough to save his employer. Then, looking at him, requested to take back all the slander he threw at him, because he just saved him. While preparing his next attack, the protagonist admitted that the polearm user finally seems useful. Then, they both faced the big monster in order to attack it, Dibo taking the lead to engage in close combat, and Palm to support with his fire arrows from afar. The protagonist fired his magic and then the polearm user destroyed the branch that the tree was using to block attack, and now the fire arrow had a clear path towards the main branches of the tree, which were hit. The Stumpy had his own plans. He caught Dibo mid-air and prepared a double attack, from 2 sides, but the 2 adventurers were ready to deal with such a situation. Palm took the right branch and Dibo took the left one. They easily dealt with the monster's trap. And the polearm user wasn't done slashing branches. He was running up the tree slashing everything in his way. But his luck ran out. He got hit and the monster tried to eat him. The protagonist used his telekinesis again and sent a boulder to move Dibo out of the way. But the big tree monster destroyed that rock. So more rocks were raised into the air. Dibo used them to quickly move towards the eyes of the beast and with a decisive hit, the right eye was destroyed. But he let go of the handle of his polearm and was sent flying. The job wasn't done yet, so he jumped back towards the left eye. At the same time, Palm used his telekinesis to grab the polearm and send it back to its owner. Dibo grabbed it and slashed the left eye, leaving the monster bling. But he left his footing and fell to the ground. But the protagonist already had his fire arrows fired. They went through the tree's mouth and destroyed the core, igniting the entire thing into a fireball. The 2 men finally won. They congratulated each other, enjoyed the big fire. In another place, at night, in a house, a girl was sitting at the table with a plate of food in front of her. She was thinking that was getting late so she should eat and then go to sleep. But before that, she decided to say a little prayer in order to thank for the food, when she heard knocks from the door. Who could it be so late at night? Opening the door, she was surprised of her visitor. It was her brother, Dibo. The girl was swept by emotions and warmly welcomed her brother back. In another place, in the same night, in a house surrounded by a forest, El Palm was facing the body of a dead person. He was emotionless, like he knew that this scene was waiting for him. The dead person was his father. Without much hesitation, he fired his staff and burned the house, leaving everything behind in the past. Mr. Abbeys of the Gaffer Merchant Union was struggling with an issue. The 100-man gate raid is closing in and he had to organize everything. Sir Rakan, his boss, is overseeing this event, so failure is not an option. All 10 major merchant unions will be focusing on clearing this gate, as the item drops will be epic or even higher. There is a possibility that legendary items might show up. The stakes are really high, so things won't be easy. The Natasha sisters of the Goldrich Merchant Union are so powerful that it's impossible to believe that they are only 2 circle adventurers. The 3 of them are so powerful that the 2 circle adventurers of the Gaffer Merchant Union cannot even be used for comparison. All the top major merchant unions will send all the best adventurers. And the Gaffer Merchant Union will be outclassed because their adventurers' quality is clearly lower. Holding Elpom's profile information, Abby's was feeling a bit hesitant, but he knew that this person is one of the best options for them right now. Then the door suddenly opened and the union representative got annoyed because they didn't knock before entering. But seeing who it was, hesitated to insist on pursuing the issue. It was Sir Rakan, who immediately asked if the list of parties who are going to participate in the raid are ready. He then sat in Mr. Abby's chair, who apologized for the delay. Rakan continued saying that it's unusual for his employee to be late with such things. Then he asked if he considered the adventurer he recommended previously, Elpom. Abby's answered that he did consider him because he's talented, but because they don't know what exactly happened in the raid, he is skeptical. Shev's party got wiped out, so it's normal to have doubts. Rakan suggested to test him again, as there is a good place. Could be better to just gather all the parties he considered. This time there will be plenty of witnesses. Sometime later, in front of a big red gate, for which raid the 2 main characters were also participating. Dibo was excited to see that there are more people in this raid. Then, a group of adventurers walked towards them, asking if they are the 5th party, then commenting that they are only 2 people with slave background. Looking around, the protagonist noticed that everyone was not welcoming. They're probably thinking that 2 slaves will only get in their way. He then noticed that all of them are 1 or 2 circle adventurers. These are pros that don't need slave baits. Mr. Abby's has also arrived and got everyone's attention. He then stated that he will keep it short. This is a test, and those who show their abilities will get a chance to clear the 100-man gate. The adventurers were shocked to hear those words. He continued that this is special treatment, and to fully take advantage of the opportunity in clearing this 40-man gate. Then everyone went through the gate, and arrived in a forest. The adventurers decided to explore separately and only gather together for killing the boss. Who finds the boss first will send a signal. Then they separated and went different directions. The team leader of one of the groups, Sir Dolan, instructed his team to move fast and kill everything they encounter. A small monster appeared from some bushes, and thinking that it's only a small fry, the mage powered up his spell, Energy Bolt, and fired. He then ordered his men to grab the energy stones from the monster's corpse. But the creature was still alive. This completely shocked the party of adventurers. How could it still be alive? That was a very powerful spell. Then they could hear a lot more noise around them, and they were soon enough completely surrounded. After an exhausting battle, they managed to defeat all the tough monsters, but they had used most of their stamina. One of the group members, worried about their circumstances, asked their team leader, what could they do in this situation? The normal monsters of this gate are too strong. Sir Dolan agreed, they cannot win this competition with kill count. They will have to take a risk and go for the boss alone. This means that they will have to break the agreement with the other parties. This is exactly what Elpom predicted the other parties to think. Dibo, out of breath, agreed with the protagonist, because the small monsters are way too hard to defeat. Then, he started to whine about how he was not receiving any help. Palm answered that there were only 3 monsters. Dibo, not wanting to waste any more time, proposed to go slay the boss, but the protagonist proposed to go wipe out all small monsters. The polearm user was confused as why his employer would propose to wipe out the small mobs when he was just talking about the boss monster. Elpom defended himself by saying that he only stated what the other teams will do. By killing all the small monsters they can get a great score. While the boss will be very dangerous and the competition will be fierce. Also, the other teams might not play fair. Dibo was annoyed that his employer was always talking like he knew everything. Palm added that he feels something dangerous about this gate and they should be really careful. In another place, Sir Dolan's team was traveling, looking for the boss monster. One of the team members noticed something and attracted her teammates' attention to it. It was an escape gate. The team leader stated that even if they weren't planning to look for it, it's good that they know where is it, then instructed his team to leave markings in order to easily find it later. Then, one of the team members started to laugh uncontrollably. Sir Dolan noticed and tried to stop him as he was too loud and it could attract monsters. When he grabbed his shoulder to check on him, noticed the distorted face of pain mixed with frantic laughter and got scarred, then he noticed that the entire team was affected by the same issue. The team leader deduced that it must be some type of poison and decided that he has to abandon his team and run away. From behind, the monster who was the cause for this situation followed Sir Dolan and released more of its poison. The last member of the party was also affected by the frantic laughter, and became unable to run away. Dibo was walking with the protagonist alongside a ravine, while thinking that only he dealt with the monsters. His employer only watched. Then, they noticed a signal flare, the sign that the boss monster was found. Sometime later, the two adventurers arrived at the place where all the parties were supposed to gather after finding the boss. They were surprised to see that they sent the signal, as they expected every party to try and kill the boss monster by themselves. Looking at all the groups, Palm noticed that one of the groups was missing. The man with the red bandana announced that all parties are present and he started to explain the situation. A woman interrupted by saying that Dolan's party is missing. The man stated that it doesn't matter and then continued by saying that they found the boss monster. And when they found it, they also witnessed the annihilation of Dolan's party, by the same boss monster, the mad poisonous mushroom. The woman couldn't believe it, as this news shocked her. All the adventurers started to panic. They were saying that the mad poisonous mushroom is too much to handle and that they need to find the escape gate in order to run. Dibo never heard about this boss monster and asked El Palm if he knows more. The protagonist ignored his team member and was thinking that the mad poisonous mushroom is the worst boss monster they could have encountered. It uses poison, so it's hard to get close to it, and also, they cannot use numbers to take it down. The best way to take it down is to use ranged attacks. But they need powerful as the boss is sturdy and fast. During this time, Dibo got pissed for being ignored. The man with the red bandana declared that the boss monster is in the way of the escape gate, so they have to face it in order to escape. Hearing this, Dibo, full of confidence, declared that the boss is nothing, with just one fire arrow from his boss, they'll annihilate it. El Palm told his party member to shut up because they will die without any plans. His fire arrow is not enough to damage it. Even the small monsters are highly resistant, of course that the boss will be very tanky. The red bandana man, by the name of Iburu, said that they shouldn't state the obvious things, and one of his party members said that it's not time for slander, they need to figure out a way. The protagonist raised his hand and said, 50,000 mesos. If everybody pays 50,000 mesos, him and his teammate will be the bait to lure the boss away. As there are 30 adventurers, that will be a total of 1.5 million mesos. That sent Dibo into panic. He weren't able to understand his employer's actions. The adventurer with the red bandana started screaming that they shouldn't get ahead of themselves. This boss monster is at another level and cannot be lured away that easily. They might be used to slave tactics, but they cannot expect these tactics to work every time. If their strategy fails, then everyone will die. Slaves are only a nuisance in high-level gates. He also stated that El Palm might be a two-circle adventurer but his other party member looks like a normal slave. He isn't even awakened. Hearing all this, Dibo was furious. He had enough hearing them talk like that, looked like they always wanted to start a fight. In a calm tone, El Palm asked Iburu, if their plan is not good enough, what are they going to do in this situation? Does he have a better plan? Seeing that the man in front of him doesn't have an answer, he concluded that the adventurers don't have a better plan, otherwise they wouldn't have shot the signal flare. The protagonist then said that in his party there is a 2-circle and a 1-circle. Dibo checked his hand and was surprised to see the circle. He didn't knew when he awakened. He even thought of himself as a genius. Alpom continued saying that his party is not that different from the others, so they shouldn't judge them that much. A woman adventurer attracted the attention of everyone and stated that she and her party is willing to pay them, but she doesn't that much money with her. The protagonist informed her that it's fine, because they can pay once everyone is out. Also, if they don't manage to escape after luring the boss, then they will end up becoming the sacrifice. But everyone needs to agree, and then he gave them time to think about it. The boss monster was next to the escape gate, enjoying a meal comprising of the adventurers he previously encountered. Then a fire arrow was shot towards him. Direct hit. The combination of poison gas and smoke covered the boss. The protagonist, who shot the arrow, told Dibo that they will run when the boss notices them. The polearm user was still not happy with the plan. The mad poisonous mushroom dashed out of the smoke with an unbelievable speed that shocked Dibo. The plan to lure out the boss monster was working. They were moving away from the escape gate. Seeing this, the woman adventurer instructed one of the other adventurers to quickly activate the gate in order to escape. He activated the gate and everyone started to evacuate. The adventurers were desperately running to save their lives, while Alpom and Dibo were running to lure the boss. But the boss wasn't the only thing they had to confront. The small monsters were also trying to get in their way. The polearm user got pissed for being challenged by the small creatures, fired up his weapon, and cleaved right through them. But that small moment it took to slash the mobs allowed the boss monster to get in close. The protagonist casted his fire arrow and they managed to put a little more distance between them and the mad poisonous mushroom. Alpom fired another arrow, but the monster managed to avoid it. The arrow wasn't wasted, because the telekinetic used his ring to manipulate it and hit the boss. Unfortunately, it was way too fast and the arrow didn't find its target. Also, the boss monster managed to close in the distance. Right before they could caught, they reached the ravine and they jumped. In order to not be followed, the protagonist fired at the monster. They dropped into the water, and were took by the current. Out of the water, Dibo was out of breath and started to whine that he almost died there. He then asked what was that thing that chased them so ferociously. The protagonist answered that it's the boss of the gate. They already discussed this. In order to kill it, they will have to prepare better. Hearing this, Dibo wasn't happy. He asked his employer, why is he talking like they are going to kill that monster? The protagonist answered that they will indeed kill the boss monster, making his teammates shout to not make jokes like that. Alpom continued saying that they came in here to hunt the boss monster, and if they escape, they won't be able to re-enter the gate. Dibo, still pissed, stated that now they know who the boss monster of this gate is, and they also know how strong it is, they should retreat. The polearm user was thinking that they should escape, as they already fulfilled their roles as baits. There is no way for them to defeat the boss monster, because not even the fire arrow can pierce it. Also, Alpom already said that they are going to die if they fight it. The protagonist stated that the situation changed. Now that the competition is gone, it's like getting a free meal. They will also get a bonus when they exit the gate. Then he reminded Dibo about the contract. His teammate said that he wants a bonus if they're going to do this. He then asked how are they going to take it down if melee and ranged attacks don't work. Is there a way to kill it without throwing their lives away? Outside the gate, Mr. Abbeys was watching the adventurers exit the portal. He was wondering why are they exiting that fast. This is a 40-man red gate, it's not that easy. He then asked one of the adventurers, Jubra, how did the raid go, and why are some people missing? She answered that they failed to clear it. Dolan's party was wiped out and Alpom and his teammate are still inside. They only managed to escape because the two of them baited the boss monster, who cannot be defeated with their group. Angry, Abbeys asked if they did nothing and only ran away with their tails tucked between their legs. The female adventurer answered that they could do nothing as the boss monster was the infamous mad poisonous mushroom. The union representative turned around and announced that he's leaving. Jubra tried to stop Abbeys because Alpom and his party member aren't out yet, and because the gate is still open, they are still alive. Mr. Abbeys answered coldly that they won't survive. It's only a matter of time as the boss monster is too powerful. He doesn't have time to wait. As he was leaving, the Gaffer Merchant Union representative was thinking that all those adventurers were useless. They were also unlucky, because 2 circles cannot defeat the mad poisonous mushroom, but still, he has no use for average adventurers. He needs adventurers who can overcome any type of situation, adventurers that can turn impossible to possible. Back inside the gate, El Palm was announcing the start of the boss hunt by firing his magic arrow. The boss monster is faster and sturdier than any monster they encountered until now, also, it can use poison which makes it very hard to deal with. In this type of situations is best to keep distance and overwhelm it with ranged attacks. But the fire arrow that the protagonist can conjure now, cannot achieve that level of power. However, if he uses telekinesis to apply a spin to the arrow at high speed, then its piercing power will be drastically increased. This is a skill that only he can use in the Maple world. He came up with it when he thought of a bullet. An ability that makes the impossible possible. He named it Revolver. The target was hit and the arrow pierced through the thick skin of the boss monster, leaving a big hole in its chest. But the arrow was supposed to hit the head, in order to destroy the core in one hit. El Palm missed. This will not be an easy fight. The mad poisonous mushroom was already rushing towards the location the arrow was fired from. The protagonist fired another shot, but it missed. It's really hard to hit a moving target with Revolver. It also has a long cooldown. He was thinking that he needs to finish this before the boss reaches his position. Another shot was fired, but it also missed. This was not all they had prepared to deal with this ferocious creature. Dibo was hiding behind a tree and when the monster got close, he pulled the rope, tripping it. This position was strategically selected because there was a swamp nearby. The boss monster fell in the swamp after tripping. The mad poisonous mushroom was covered in mud but he came really close to the protagonist, who was looking from above. But the surprise weren't over. Dibo, who tied his polearm with a rope, swung his weapon from afar and got a direct hit, making the poisonous blood of the monster fly out. Now that he could stand away from the toxic gas of the boss, Dibo was challenging it, asking to play a game together. El Palm was watching his ally corner the enemy from above and thinking that all the conditions in order to safely fight the boss monster have been met. The main mission was to lead the enemy into the swamp in order to nullify its strength. The mud will help with eliminating the monster's strongest ability. Dibo, while looking at the boss monster, started asking it what's wrong and if it's frustrated about the holes on its face being clogged. Then, he swung his polearm straight into the enemy, keeping enough distance as to not be in danger of the enemy attack. But one hit wasn't enough to deal with such a durable monster, so he continued with a barrage of attacks. But the mad poisonous mushroom found an opening and tried to charge towards its attacker, but another one of the reason why the protagonist chose the swamp as the place to fight the boss, was also because it's the worst place for fast monsters. From the cliff, El Palm launched another attack using his ability, Revolver. This time it cannot avoid it as it cannot move fast. Direct hit. Dibo was wondering if they defeated it, but seeing its shape in the smoke raised by the last attack, he had no choice but to acknowledge its resistance. The protagonist shouted at his ally to aim his attacks at the monster's core, which should be in the head. Dibo shouted back that he knows and swung his polearm again, keeping his distance. But this time, the boss monster caught the weapon, and pulled hard, which made his enemy to be pulled with it. El Palm reacted fast and used his telekinesis to hit the mad poisonous mushroom with a log. Because the monster wasn't expecting such a move, it got hit right in the face, which also allowed Dibo to maneuver around his enemy, hit it again in the head, and ultimately escape to a safe distance. He also managed to recover his weapon. Then, using his speed and the debris from the swamp, stared to move around his target in order to find an opening for the next attack. But, he wasn't alone. El Palm used his telekinesis to block the monster's vision. The mad poisonous mushroom saw his enemy through the water screen and attacked, but no one was there. Dibo was behind, swinging his polearm with all his might. And the head of the boss monster was cut off in one swing. The body was still standing, full of wounds from the long battle, but the head was sinking in the swamp. The polearm user was out of breath, and with the last of his energy gave his ally a thumbs up. The protagonist was satisfied with his teammate's performance, but the monster was still alive. It came behind Dibo and hit him with all its might, knocking out the young warrior. It then released a loud shriek. While he was preparing an attack, the protagonist couldn't believe that the monster is still alive. The core should be in the head. The boss monster rushed towards the man on the cliff using the debris in the swamp, but Elpalm was using every trick in the book to slow down the enemy's advance. The monster jumped towards the cliff and grabbed on. It was advancing fast towards its target. Looking at it, the protagonist was thinking that he can shoot just one more revolver shot, but he cannot shoot it anywhere. He needs to find the core. In the meantime, Dibo woke up, and he was pissed about being ambushed. He then threw his polearm as hard as he could towards the mad poisonous mushroom who was still climbing the cliff. The monster was hit and cut in half. The lower half fell into the swamp, but the upper part continued climbing like nothing happened. Elpalm shot a fire arrow towards the monster, but it managed to avoid getting hit. Then, the mad poisonous mushroom showed its real head. That last attack was from a signal flare. The protagonist thanked the monster for showing its real head. Then, after charging his spell, shot the boss monster with the ability revolver, sending it flying back into the swamp, finally piercing the core. But the monster left them with a final gift. It exploded in a cloud of poison. Dibo has stated that it's being a pain all the way to the end. Elpalm used his telekinesis and grabbed his teammate in order to save him from the rushing poison. The polearm user was grateful to his savior, as he thought that he's going to die down there. The entire swamp was filled with the poison released by the boss monster. Dibo asked his ally if it's finally over, to which he received a positive answer. The protagonist started saying that his teammate did well and that they will grab the mana stone of the monster after the poison clears. Then a shape passed right by him. It was the upper part of the mad poisonous mushroom. How could it still be alive? The core was heavily damaged. The last thing the monster wanted to do was to explode its core and take with it the ones who dared to kill it. Finding himself in this situation, all Dibo could do was to laugh. At the Gaffer Merchant Union, Sir Rakan was laughing because his subordinate returned before the raid was even declared a failure. He then said that he never changed, especially that bad temper. Abby's apologized and then wanted to say something about the Cygnus Knights, but was interrupted by a knock at the door. That made him shout that he doesn't want to be interrupted. The one who knocked announced that he's entering. This shocked the two men. It was the protagonist. He returned from the raid. That put a huge smile on Rakan's face, as he found the situation very interesting. He then asked Mr. Abbeys what is going on. Did someone rise from the grave? Looking at the protagonist, presented himself as Rakan and stated that he admires the adventurer's survival skills and he is the person that they need at Gaffer. Elpalm thanked the man for the praise. Rakan said that he's going to ask only one question: can he show those impressive skills again during the 100-man raid? The answer that he got was that it will be tough. That answer left Rakan without any other words, but it pissed off Mr. Abbeys. The union representative was shouting that the protagonist needs to be more respectful, and as an adventurer he cannot just pick and choose his missions. He also needs to pay of his department. With a smile on his face, Rakan stated that Elpalm didn't say that the mission is impossible, and because he doesn't like to beat around the bush, will ask the next question: how much do you want? Dibo spit out his drink out of shock. Then he asked his teammate if he actually said 5 million meso per person. Since it's two of them, that means 10 million meso. That's too much. Elpalm was covered in his teammate's drink, who apologized. Dibo then continued asking if the protagonist isn't being too greedy, because the ones who offered them the mission will decline. While wiping himself, he said that it will be their employer's decision to accept the contract or not. The polearm user stated that his teammate is too relaxed about this situation. They might be put in the black book if the offer falls through. Then, two acquaintances showed up before them, saying that the two young men look like they're having fun, unlike themselves. Hearing this, Dibo was ready for a fight. He shouted that this is not how you thank someone for saving your life, then invited the other man outside to fight. But the two adventurers bowed and apologized. Iburu stated that he misjudged his saviors and because of that he is ashamed to call himself an adventurer, so he offers his honest apology. Then he handed the hothead a sack of money while saying that it's the 1.5 million mesos from the 30 people they saved from the Red Gate raid. They also pitched in a little bit extra. El Palm interjected by saying that they don't want it. They agreed only on the 1.5 million mesos. And did the work he was paid to do, so they don't need thanks money. Those comments surprised the two adventurers. This wasn't the reaction they were expecting. Dibo stated that he got excited for nothing and then muttered that he will count the money. The protagonist looked at Iburu and asked if he can do the work he's paid to do. Back at the Gaffer Merchant Union, Mr. Abbeys was saying that Rakan shouldn't pay 10 million mesos. That's an amount of money you usually pay third or fourth circle adventurers. Plus, agreeing to these conditions might create a bad precedent, even if El Palm is one of the best candidates. It's possible that he asked for that amount of money to test the water. They should renegotiate. Rakan asked if it's truly the case, as the protagonist might ask for twice the amount. Abbeys became confused after hearing that statement, then was handed a piece of paper to read it. While the union representative was reading the paper, Sir Rakan added that they will only send El Palm's party to represent Gaffer. Something caught Abbeys' attention in the paper he was reading, then asked his superior if it's real. The man in front of him answered that it would be troubling if it wasn't true, as he paid a lot of money for the information. It was about a certain person called Dark Lord Jean. Sir Rakan put on a serious face and stated that the war already started. A couple of days later, at the huge 100-man Red Gate, people were camping, waiting for everyone to arrive in order to start the raid. El Palm and Dibo also arrived, and the latter was expressing his surprise that the Gaffer Merchant Union accepted their terms. The protagonist asked his teammate to focus, and the answer was to not worry because he is also an experienced adventurer now. Looking around themselves, they noticed that everyone was throwing unfriendly looks, which made Dibo say that the atmosphere isn't the best. Then, a man who seemed friendly, presented himself as Shuden from Guinness Merchant Union, an E-class adventurer, and greeted the two adventurers from the Gaffer Merchant Union. The protagonist presented himself as a C-class adventurer, which made the Shuden think that he's higher than 2 circles, because C-class adventurers are usually 3 circles and higher. Then, they got interrupted by someone who asked for some space. It was a blonde woman asking to talk with the party sent by Gaffer. The E-class adventurer left disappointed, seeing that the two groups were associated. El Palm remembered talking with Abbeys about doing something that he didn't want it to do. The union representative was insistent that the young adventurer should just do what he is told, because the Gaffer Merchant Union will be working with the Cygnus Knight Order to clear the 100-man gate. They follow the teachings of Empress Cygnus, and are the strongest group. Mr. Abbeys was saying that the quota for the gate was taken by the other Merchant Union adventurers, so they will have to work with the Cygnus Knights. Even if it's only their trainee knights, the probability of success will be higher. Even if they may have ulterior motives, the offer they made to work together isn't bad. The protagonist then agreed, if it's just a cooperation. Which made the union representative say that it might not be that easy, because something about them seems off. The blonde woman presented herself as Kiri, the leader of the Cygnus Knights trainees. She also stated that she's of higher status than them and all they have to do is to listen and follow her orders. Hearing this, Dibo was thinking that she has a serious attitude problem. Kiri continued by asking if the two men are the only adventurers sent by the Gaffer Merchant Union, to which she received a positive answer. She then added that Gaffer might have given up if they only sent 2 adventurers. Then, 2 adventurers' parties appeared, Crocus party of the Dig Merchant Union and Cubal's party of the Merdia Merchant Union. The elites of the respective merchant unions. Another party that showed up was the famous 3 Natasha sisters of the Goldrich Merchant Union. Looking at them, Kiri stated that they're acting cocky. A man announced that everyone arrived and then presented himself as Lonko, the guard of the raid. Him and his team are there to offer support when everyone is exiting the gate. He also added that even if their merchant unions explain the process, he will explain again. The items that come out of the gate aren't owned by the adventurers that obtain them, but by their respective merchant unions. The adventurers are paid based on the contract signed with their employers. They should be happy that at least they can keep the mana stones. If anyone is caught trying to pocket one of the items, they'll have to face their party of B-class adventurers. Dibo noticed the number of circles on the hand of one of the adventurers and was wondering if everyone in that team was a 5-circle. With the announcement concluded, the raid started and the adventurers entered the gate. Kiri announced that she will be in the lead and Elpom's party should follow, as they will be the ones to succeed. Dibo was really unhappy with the blonde woman's attitude and started saying that he doesn't want to work with her. But the protagonist was thinking that he finally got here. This is a gate he didn't raid in his previous life. He needs to succeed because this is where everything starts. Then, the two men also went on to enter the gate. Dibo was saying that he will not help the Cygnus Knights, even if they beg for help. Everyone was slowly entering the gate domain, then moving out to explore the area. While moving away from the gate entrance, Dibo was expressing his amazement as he never saw grass this big. Kiri stated that they're not here for sightseeing and to keep on and not lag behind. Hearing those words, the polearm user asked his teammate if they should keep tolerating this treatment from those bastards. After he turned towards him, noticed that the protagonist was kneeling down, close to the ground, and asked what is he doing. A noise could be heard coming from the tall grass, and looking towards it, the adventurers noticed a wall of dust rising from a distance. It was the ribbon pigs. There were probably at least over 1,000 of them. Seeing this, Kiri started screaming that everyone should spread out as there are still parties entering the gate. There is the unwritten rule to not draw danger towards the gate. A lot of chaos was created due to the sudden attack of the monsters. The parties weren't following their leaders anymore and everyone was just going their own way. A group of monsters were chasing after the Cygnus Knights trainees. While running, Kiri announced that they will bait the pigs in a place with many obstacles and hunt them there. Then, one of the trainees said that the Gaffer Merchant Union party is not with them, making the blonde woman act surprised. In the meantime, the two men were safe, away from the pigs. Dibo stated that they can relax now, and asked his ally how did he know that the monsters will come stampeding. Elpom answered that based on his experience, there are many herds of beasts that travel across plains just like the one they were in. Ribbon pigs are monsters of around 2 meters in length, with an aggressive personality. They usually travel in groups that consist of hundreds or even thousands. Elpom was thinking that the ribbon pigs aren't hard to hunt, it's just tough to deal with their high number. The other parties should be able to deal with them. But most adventurers will try to save energy and will try to avoid a confrontation this early on, since nobody knows what other monsters they'll run into. There is no way that they only have to fight ribbon pigs. In his previous life, the 100-man gate raid failed and all the adventurers died. Dibo asked the protagonist what is he thinking so hard about, and didn't notice when he walked into a trap. His teammate saved him right in time to not get stabbed. The shaken polearm user asked in a trembling voice who would create such a trap. In another place, another adventurer was walking into a trap, but he was a veteran, such a slow and basic trap was nothing for him. He told his party that this trap was quite childish, and one of his teammates reported that he took care of the other traps. Then Crocus, the party leader, told them to not let their guard down. While these traps are small, they can still kill on the spot. The creators of these traps seem to copy humans. They aren't regular monsters as they show a high degree of intelligence. Which means that they're most probably hobs. They are difficult to deal with as they're equivalent to a boss monster in a red gate. Now they have an idea of what they are dealing with. The difficulty is surely quite high, but because there are also talented adventurers in this raid, they have a chance. Crocus then ordered his party to follow him in order to make use of the information they got. But they heard some noise behind them, the head of one of his teammates was already cut off. The rest of his team was dealt with in less than a moment, they were all dead, and before he could make sense of what was going on, his head was also rolling on the floor. His killer was calling him a dumbass for acting like he knows everything. In the tall grass field, a man was saying that he doesn't know whose idea was to use the ribbon pigs to distract everyone, but it was a good idea, as it gave them a good opportunity to start working, which is quite bothersome. But they are short on time, so he should also get started. Behind him, the Natasha sisters were like frozen in time. The mysterious man stated that it's no use in trying to move because it's the type of magic that it can freeze them in place for at least 30 minutes. Then, with a weak voice, one of the sisters asked why is the man doing something like this. He answered that she's amazing, being able to speak while under the effect of his spell, but since she seems to be dangerous, they'll just have to get rid of her right away. The other two sisters were terrified by the events that were unfolding in front of them. After killing one of the sisters, the mysterious man answered that the question asked by the deceased is quite hard, why is he actually doing this? Activating his magic staff, he stated that it might be easier if he put it like this. Everything that he's doing is for the black magician. He then casted fire arrow, leaving a mess behind. Noticing that someone passed through the gate again, he stated that there is no end to this, he only wants to laze around. The mysterious man, by the name of William, remembered how he was kneeling in front of a man with white hair, who was saying that they waited quietly for a long time, hiding, growing in strength and spreading everywhere. The time to finally reap the fruits of their efforts has finally arrived. Hearing this, William stated that he will not disappoint. The white-haired man offered a gift, provided by a certain person, and stated that he won't accept failures. That memory was a reminder to why he cannot half-ass this mission. He needs to get a bit more serious in order for everything to work out the way is intended. Sometime later, at night, the main party was staking a wooden fortress created by the Hobbs. There were a lot of monsters patrolling the area. Dibo was surprised by what he was seeing. He then asked his teammate if all of them are actually at the level of a boss monster. To which, the protagonist answered that he already explained that. There is only one boss monster among them. But all of them are strong and have a lot of stamina, which makes it hard to fight them. Plus they seem to have looted some items from the dead adventurers, so now they are a bigger pain to deal with, since some of them can use skills through the items. Dibo then said that it will be like facing an army of adventurers and there's just two of them. El Palm answered that his ally catches on fast. Dibo continued saying that it will be impossible, they need to join up with Kiki or Kiri or whatever was her name. The protagonist said that he thought that they both wanted to work separately from the knights, and the polearm user answered that this was before he knew what they were dealing with. A bit later, a hob left the fortress with 2 bags and started walking through the forest. At one point he noticed something coming from behind. It was Dibo swinging his polearm with all his strength. But the monster dodged the attack. The man was frustrated that he had to take on the hob alone. Then the creature went for a counter-attack, but Dibo was faster and managed to maneuver around the big monster. The young man landed on his fight after that close encounter with the monster's punch. But then it was chased around by the hob, who was throwing a flurry of punches towards him, the adventurer, closely avoiding each and every one of them. Getting tired of running around, found an opening and hit his attacker in the head while cursing him, then, followed with a slash towards the monster's leg, the big creature dropping to the ground. As to not lose his advantage, Dibo went for another slash from behind the enemy, but the hob was fast and the attack was wasted. It was the monster's turn to go on to the attack. The young man wasn't ready and he got punched hard and sent flying into a tree. The polearm user was getting frustrated because his opponent was more resilient than any monster he encountered until now. The beast went for another attack, but Dibo managed to dodge in time. He then found another opening, and cut off the hob's left hand. But the fight wasn't over, the big monster grabbed the man's head, and then bashed him into the ground. None of them was ready to give up. Both were fighting with everything they had. After escaping his opponent's grasp, Dibo put on some distance between each other. Then, he jumped back in, with everything he got, for one last hit. The fight was over. Dibo asked his teammate why didn't he help. El Palm answered that it looked like he could handle it alone. Plus, he got the experience of taking one of them down by himself, but the hothead wasn't satisfied with that answer. He was actually doubting the mission because there was an army of those monsters. Then, they found themselves next to what seemed like a battlefield. The dead, all seemed to be the from Cygnus Knight's order. One of them was still alive. Dibo noticed the struggling man and informed his teammate about it. The survivor was one of the Cygnus Knight's trainees, but he was badly wounded. Walking towards him, the protagonist asked what happened and if it was the Hobbs who attacked them. The survivor answered that it wasn't anything like that, it was a trolling. Some people enter the gates with the purpose to collect information and attack other adventurers. And because the gate disappears after they escape, the wrongdoings disappear with it. However, this time is different, because the gate wasn't cleared yet and if they want to gain powerful items, they have to confront the powerful Hobbs. And even if they succeed, there are powerful adventurers waiting outside the gate. Are they trying to kill the elites of all the merchant unions? But that doesn't make sense because it's like declaring war on all the unions without gaining anything. There must be something more to it. Dibo asked El Palm if it could actually be a trolling, to which he answered that it could. They then noticed that the blonde woman wasn't among the corpses. The wounded man got on his knees and started saying that it's all his fault for not noticing that they had a traitor among them, especially when it was the leader of the group. The protagonist couldn't understand how one of the Cygnus Knights became a trolling. The survivor answered that he also doesn't understand, but if he thinks about it, the orders she gave at the entrance of the gate seemed to be part of her plan. Also, before finishing up, she said it herself, that she's a follower of the Black Magician. That statement surprised Dibo. 800 years ago, the Black Magician, who was a transcendent, threatened the Maple World with his many followers. In order to stop him, the 6 heroes took charge and turned the fight against the evil mage and his followers and was sealed. With the follower army in chaos, the allied forces pushed back and cleared out all the remaining followers of the Black Magician. Dibo couldn't believe that Kiri was a follower of the Black Magician. Then El Palm stated that it's not time to worry about monsters, they have to find her. And then asked if the survivor wants to join them, because he needs to prepare to fight the traitor. The wounded knight answered that it's all he wants to do. Kiri, the leader of the Cygnus Knight's trainees, who were almost all dead, was running, when she encountered William, the follower of the Black Magician. He stated that he was waiting for her, together with his allies. He then stated that she was the one who dealt with the ribbon pigs, and they had an easy job dealing with the adventurers who were split up. Then, he asked if she received the present they sent for her. With a defiant look on her face, she asked who are they. Dibo and the survivor were walking together through the forest. Dibo was saying that they can slow down if the wounds are hurting. The protagonist already went ahead. The survivor answered that he is fine. Then the polearm user continued that his teammate is amazing at scouting, it's more than sure that they will find her soon. The wounded man answered that it's good to hear that, while holding a cursed knife in his hand. In the vast plains, at dawn, Kiri the Knight was fighting the followers of the Black Magician. Watching from a side, William was saying that she is amazing, but this is expected from a training captain of the Cygnus Knights. But how long will she be able to keep this up? After all, she is at a disadvantage. They have more men. The female knight activated her special ability, Rising Sun, then, another adventurer attacked from above. She parried the attack of her opponent, then, because she was faster, killed the follower of the magician using her skill Solar Slash. The blonde woman was tired from the long battle, but threatened to kill her enemies if they don't state their purpose. William called her noisy and asked his allies to stop slacking and kill her. At that moment, a group of the enemy adventurers attacked the knight all at once, but, from the tall grass, another adventurer jumped on the side of Kiri and decimated the opponents in one brutal slash. That surprised the tired Cygnus Knight. It was Dibo, the polearm user who saved her, someone who she never expected. Back to the past, when Dibo was telling the survivor that El Palm is great at finding people, and that they will soon find Kiri, the wounded man got his knife ready and then tried to stab the polearm user while saying that he sends his regards to female knight. But he got his hand blown off before he could do anything else. The protagonist stopped the attacker with one of his fire arrows. Dibo was confused and asked his teammate what is going on. El Palm answered that it's as he expected, an awful act. Because he doesn't usually trust people, was able to see right through it. Back to the present, William was saying that it's unexpected for an uninvited guest to just pop up. One of the Black Magician followers stated that the guest is from the Gaffer Merchant Union, which means that Piton, the wounded man, failed his mission. Even after he received a second chance, to make up for losing to Lady Kiran. Now, because both of them are looking quite strong, the fight will be annoying, so they will have to use their elite adventurers to take them out. Kiran, the knight, started to shout at Dibo to be careful because those people are dangerous. He answered that he knows, they are perverts, correct? The mage declared that they will finish this fast, then sent everyone to attack. Dibo asked Kiran to take on one of them while he handles the rest, and she said to not let his guard down. One of the enemy adventurers used his ability, Savage Blow, but the polearm user dodged out of the way, then swung his weapon against him, but he managed to avoid the attack. At that moment, another adventurer shot her fire arrow towards Dibo, who barely avoided getting pierced. While the hothead was busy calling his last attacker a cheap bastard, another adventurer managed to snuck behind him, and then attacked. It was a success, it managed to draw blood. But the wound was shallow. The follower of the Black Magician went for another attack, saying that he'll put his opponent out of his misery really soon. It was a leap attack from above. Seeing this, the blonde knight was screaming towards Dibo, "What is he doing?" The polearm user wasn't that easy to take down. He got behind his enemy and answered that he's playing with the enemy, that's what he's doing. After that, he slashed the enemy adventurer in half with just one hit. Another opponent with a spear rushed towards him and attacked. But for Dibo, those attacks were too slow to do any damage. With another slash, he sent the enemy adventurer flying back. The spear user was impressed by how strong his opponent was. But he didn't have much time to think, because the knife-wielding adventurer, Shuden, was sent flying by Kiri, who stated that these followers of the Black Magician cannot be called elites. Those comments pissed off the enemy adventurers, and William decided that it's time for him to join the battle. Then, while drawing his fire arrow, stated that this is where the battle ends, because they wasted already enough time. The fire arrow was shot towards Dibo, and as it was approaching his head, he realized that this spell is faster than the spells fired by his teammate. The fire arrow exploded, and the mage started saying that his fire arrows are on another level, so you cannot drop your guard when he's around. But the fight wasn't over. El Palm showed up just in time to block the last attack. One of the enemies asked who is he, and the answer was that he isn't the only guest. Then pointed with his telekinesis finger at the tall grass, from where a group of ribbon pigs showed up. It was a big group of trampling monsters that went straight towards the followers of the Black Magician. A giant ribbon pig dropped dead at the feet of William the Mage, who declared that the protagonist is quite troublesome for putting them in this situation, then running away. He then called for Gerald, who apologized, and then said that he just finished up with his side. William said that they don't have to regroup, because they need to chase after their enemies right away. He was thinking that if they manage to get out the gate, the entire situation will become so troublesome that he doesn't want to think about it. His allies informed him that they found some footprints, and he told them that if they encounter the cloaked man, to just hold him because he wants to take care of him. One of the Black Magician followers declared that he shouldn't do that alone, because the cloaked man seemed quite powerful. Hearing this, William said that there is no need to worry about him, because in this gate, there is no one stronger than him. Dibo was in a good mood. He asked his teammates if they saw the faces of their opponents when the pigs appeared. He was betting on the fact that they won't survive being trampled by those pigs. El Palm answered that the followers of the Black Magician won't die easily, and also, they should be careful where they step because there might be traps. Dibo continued by asking why didn't they finish them there, if the protagonist aimed for an opening, could have easily ended their lives. El Palm answered that the enemy mage is stronger than him, answer which confused the polearm user. The protagonist remembered his encounter with William, how the arrow was going straight towards his teammate. He managed to fire his own fire arrow to intercept the enemy one, but that wasn't enough. The arrow fired by William was only deflected. He was really worried because his own fire arrow barely managed to affect the enemy one. Dibo asked if that was a joke. because it's impossible for someone to be stronger than his boss. Palm asked why would he joke about something like that, and that was the moment when Dibo realized that they actually ran away from a fight. The protagonist untied his sleeve and then showed his circles. He stated that the second circle widened to its limit. Depending on the thickness of the circle, even when using the same type of magic, there will be a difference in speed and power. Since he is at the peak of second circle, they should be equal, or he should have been even stronger. But somehow, William's magic was beyond his understanding. Because he was able to enter this gate, he must also be a second circle, but he somehow managed to strengthen his skill. He is probably the strongest adventurer in this gate at the moment. Dibo didn't want it to believe that. Then asked what should they do. Should they try another ambush but with hobs this time instead of pigs? The protagonist answered that they cannot pull something like that because the hobs are smarter than the pigs and they would figure out their strategy and that might end up putting them at a disadvantage. Then, Kiri chimed in and asked why they don't understand the situation they are in right now. The important part is that a follower of the Black Magician infiltrated the Cygnus Knights, and this information is so important that it holds the fate of the Maple World. That's why they need to exit the gate immediately. While her hand was shaking, she also declared that they should give up on clearing the gate. The protagonist declared that it's pointless and Dibo was surprised to hear that. Kiri brought up again the fact that Palm used to be a slave and then accused him of only thinking about the little reward he will get for clearing the gate. The former slave said that alerting the people outside of the appearance of the Black Magician followers is not the best way to get rid of them. She shouldn't underestimate them. These people have been hiding for hundreds of years, growing their roots. Exposing them will only help with cutting of a branch. They will go back into hiding and continue to eat away at the Maple World like a parasite from where no one can see. Hearing this, Kiri exploded with rage, and jumped at Palm's neck screaming that he only says what doesn't work. What should they do then? He shouldn't spout crap without a plan to back it up. They are being chased at the moment and they need to get out of there before, and she got interrupted. The protagonist said that they should let them know who the real hunters are. Sometime later, in the same forest, Shuden with the rest of his teammates were rushing to catch up with the adventurers that managed to escape. He declared that they need to find them quickly, because if they escape, their necks won't be safe. At that moment, he realized that there was someone right behind him. It was Dibo, who had the courtesy to say hello. He then swung his weapon, but Shuden managed to dodge it. The spear user was trying to attack from behind while screaming that it's stupid for them to come looking for a fight, but because of this, he will kill them this time. But the main party had some surprises. A swinging log trap was activated and the follower of the Black Magician by the name of Andres was sent flying. Kiri was the one who released the log. While swinging his polearm, Dibo asked his opponent if he can afford to leisurely look away in this situation. But he missed again, because Shuden was very agile, and managed to get close with one of his knives. But Dibo was also agile and dodged the attack of the double knife user. Shuden couldn't believe that he missed, but he couldn't afford to lose his concentration, because Dibo landed a knee right in his face, sending him stumbling backwards. He then dropped his polearm and took his opponent through a barrage of punches and kicks. At the same time, the crossbow user was trying to take a shot at Dibo. She couldn't keep up with all the movement. Then Kiri showed up from behind and attacked. The surprised follower of the Black Magician managed to dodge in time, but Kiri continued with a series of relentless attacks. Then, the crossbow user tripped and the Cygnus Knight found an opening to land an attack. But it was barely blocked. With a lot of fury in her eyes, Kiri stated that she is already pissed by the current situation, so trash should just die. In another part of the forest, William said that everyone started fighting, but he is curious about one thing: was the protagonist's party waiting for them to have this fight? Palm had nothing to say to his opponent. The enemy magician had no issue with not receiving an answer and then declared that they should also start, while they were both powering up their staffs. Then they both casted fire arrow at the same time. After William missed his attack, the protagonist casted another fire arrow. Not even worrying about being hit by the attack, The evil magician was really excited about this battle. The arrow seemed to have hit the target, but the field was covered in smoke. The protagonist had to wait for the smoke to dissipate in order to confirm if he dealt damage. But his enemy was alive, and used the cover of the smoke to launch a surprise attack. It was a rock, which the protagonist managed to easily avoid. William was right behind El Palm with his staff powered up, asking if that's all he's got. Fire arrow. The forest was on fire and the follower of the black magician, as well as the protagonist, were still standing. William expressed his amazement because El Palm managed to cancel his last attack. He said that it was unexpected because he shouldn't have the power to block it. And then asked how he did it, but his opponent didn't answer. Seeing that he's not getting any response, William stated that it's fine if he doesn't want to talk, after all, they are in the middle of a fight. And then, while launching a fire arrow, stated that he will find out by himself. At that moment, El Palm used his staple ability, Revolver. The follower of the black magician was surprised by what he was seeing. He realized that his opponent is using telekinesis to spin the fire arrow. Just like a drill piercing through his own fire magic. This is something that he never seen before. After he survived that last explosion, William declared that it's impressive to use such a combination of skills to strengthen an attack. This means that the protagonist is the type of people that are usually considered geniuses. And that's the type of people he hates the most. While casting another fire arrow, he declared that he wants to have more fun and to show him more of what he's got. El Palm used his telekinesis to create a barrier of rocks in order to defend against the enemy attack. The barrier crumbled immediately, but it allowed him to avoid getting caught in the attack. William, with a lot of excitement, asked his opponent what is he doing. They're not playing hide and seek here. At the same time, the protagonist used his telekinesis again, but his enemy didn't understood why. Then, a fire arrow almost hit William, who didn't understood when that spell was cast. El Palm still had more to show. He continued to use his telekinesis to continuously attack his opponent, who was struggling to dodge the consecutive attacks. Having enough, William declared that they played around for too much and casted a fire arrow. Seeing it coming towards him, the protagonist used his ability, Revolver. The follower of the black magician took advantage of the opening created by the explosion and used his ability, Poison Breath. His opponent had no time to react as the entire battlefield was covered in poison. William declared that Poison Breath is useful, but it leaves you open while casting. El Palm is a fire and telekinesis user, so he guessed that he could seal his attacks if he could force his fire arrow to be on cooldown. Now that he got affected by the poison, he won't be able to move for about 30 minutes. But his fire arrow is also on cooldown, so he will finish the job with his dagger. With an excited tone, the enemy mage said that this is his favorite part. He cannot wait anymore, because he is curious how his opponent's face of despair looks. Will he tremble? Will he cry? But the protagonist wasn't planning on doing any of that. He was planning another action that William wasn't expected. A punch to the face, powerful enough to rock his brain and send him flying. In the past, at the bar where Iburu met up with Dibo and El Palm, asked how did they manage to survive the 40-man gate. He wanted to know how the two managed to defeat that strong boss monster. He was so curious that he offered to pay the tab if he tells him. Dibo answered that it would be pointless to tell him, because it's not something that he can do. El Palm used an ability that he called Room. He basically sucked and trapped the air using telekinesis. At that moment, he thought that they're dead, but he sucked all the poison in a large area. That's all he did, nothing special. Iburu then asked if that is not just plain cheating, and Dibo answered that it's exactly what he kept saying, his boss is a straight-up cheat character. Back to the current events, El Palm was dragging William through a world of pain, punching and kicking him relentlessly with all his strength, giving no time for counterattack. The enemy mage tried to ask how the poison didn't affect him, but his mouth got closed forcefully, swallowing all the words before they even got out. Another flurry of punches followed and the mage was sent flying into a tree trunk. The protagonist then used his telekinesis to grab his staff from where it was dropped and casted a fire arrow right towards the helplessly looking William. That attack cut the tree and took one arm from the enemy mage. The severed hand fell to the ground, and the enemy mage was in pain. But he wasn't ready to give up. He activated his ring and spread poison all over the battlefield once again. Palm used his telekinesis, and with his ability Room, he caught all the poison. He was thinking that his opponent is acting like he went insane but is actually targeting something. Since his poison breath is not working, he will probably try to get his staff back. So when he will try that, the protagonist will end him. But he didn't know that William's plan was different. A huge fireball was heading towards him. It was too late to avoid it anymore. William was really happy that his plan worked. He was set on killing his opponent. He had enough, it was time to pay back all the pain. Palm was on the ground. He took that hit directly. The damage he received was serious, he was coughing blood. He admitted himself that he left his guard down, and didn't expect his enemy to have a flame orb as a hidden card. He wouldn't have made such a mistake before his regression. While the big fire orbs were heading towards him, he was thinking that he lost his touch. While holding Shulden with one hand, Dibo was wondering if his teammate is alright after he saw that big explosion. At the same time, Kiri took care of another one of the followers of the Black Magician. She then told Dibo to stop playing and finish off his opponent, because Palm needs their help. The man said that this was his plan all along. Then, an arrow came out of nowhere and killed Shulden. It was a big group of hobs, exited to kill the humans in front of them. Dibo stated that he was wondering when they were going to show up. Kiri asked if they are green hobs, and then stated that they should focus up and finish things fast. The man said that she shouldn't look down on them because they aren't easy to handle. Also, it seems that one of them looks a bit different, he is also receiving special treatment. There seems to be something weird about it. Back to the mage fight, William was wondering if his opponent was finally defeated. But he wasn't feeling too good, as the prolonged battle had a negative effect on his health. He was even throwing up blood. The enemy mage was acknowledging the fact that the protagonist was a powerful opponent. He managed to drag him to this point, so he should have at least asked for his name. From the other side of the fire, he heard the name Palm. William couldn't believe that his opponent is still alive. How could this be possible? Exiting from the sea of fire, the protagonist said that he should remember well that name, because it's the last name he will hear while he's still alive. The follower of the Black Magician compared Palm to a cockroach for surviving so many of his attacks. But this is still pointless because he doesn't have enough energy or power to win this battle. The protagonist stated that he knows that he needs more than 2 circles to win. William was surprised to see a mana stone, and then started laughing, saying that he cannot believe the fact that his opponent put his hopes on circling up from absorbing the stone. He then called him a dumb bastard because you need enlightenment through countless experiences. Just absorbing the mana stone is not enough. The protagonist started to absorb the mana stone and stated that he knows that you need experience and enlightenment. William was surprised by what was happening. A third circle started to slowly form on Palm's forearm. After the third circle was formed, stated that he has plenty of experiences, so there is no reason to worry about such things. The follower of the Black Magician declared that he won't be tricked by bluffs and casted 2 fire arrows. Looking at the 2 arrows, the protagonist wasn't worried, and then casted his own fire arrow, which easily penetrated through the spells of his opponent. In a desperate attempt, William also used his flame orb in order to stop that fire arrow. But Palm used telekinesis to transform his spell into a revolver shot, which was too much for the orb to stop. Also, the enemy mage couldn't handle a third circle mage, on top of the fact that he was already tired from the battle. This was his end. The protagonist also took a lot of damage after this fight, but he was the winner. There wasn't much left of the enemy mage, only one of his arms. Then, Palm remembered that he should at least ask for his name. In another part of the forest, the green hobs were looking for the humans, which were hiding behind a tree. Kiri was thinking that things are starting to get more complicated, while Dibo seemed to be passed out. A couple of moments earlier, Dibo was swinging his axe, killing all the hobs in his way, and even keeping count of how many he slayed. He had just eliminated the 17th one. Kiri, while she was struggling to take care of one of them, couldn't believe how easy it was for the man to defeat these beasts. The polearm user was screaming that this is too easy, now that he can see their patterns of attack. One of the hobs tried to attack him, but he was too fast for him. And while already counting him as his 18th kill, he attacked from the above, but then, he got swatted away by a powerful fire spell. It was the orbital flame ability casted by the special hob, which was still sitting on his throne. Kiri was surprised by that attack. Back to the present, SE still couldn't believe that a monster is capable of using items. This makes things really troublesome. Do they have no other choice but to stay hidden until they can meet up with Elpom? She hoped that he is still alive. And then a hob showed up and tried to grab them. Fortunately, she managed to escape before they got caught. But the hobs were still right behind them, they were really fast and she also had to carry Dibo. Then, one hob showed up in front of her, swinging his axe. She threw the fainted man into the air, drew her sword and eliminated the obstacle, then continued on her way and caught the man in her arms. She was thinking that both men in her party are a handful, but she can handle them if it's one at a time. Then, something got her attention. Her path was blocked by a big fireball being casted right in front. She can handle any hob, as long as it is not that weird one that's using the fire magic staff. Kiri tried to run away, but the mage hob fired yet another orbital flame orb. There was no way for her to outrun it. The special hob was happy to kill his enemies in a big fiery explosion. But the two humans were still alive. Dibo woke up and was standing. The Cygnus Knight couldn't believe that the polearm user could still stand. Without much hesitation, Dibo rushed towards his enemies. And the special hob sent all his subordinates to attack the human. But these monsters were nothing for the polearm user, he was cutting through them with ease. One of them tried to attack from behind, but was dealt with in no time. The hob mage took advantage of the situation and blew off the area where Dibo was fighting. Watching everything unfold, Kiri was surprised by the fact that the hothead managed to avoid the explosion and then close the distance with the special hob. Dibo was set on killing his enemy, and his weapon was really close to hit. But the mage shot a powerful fire spell. Dibo was sent flying, but Kiri managed to catch him in order to avoid more wounds. The attack with the polearm didn't make contact, but it was powerful enough to do some damage with only the air pressure. Now, the special monster was pissed. How could a mere human dare to attack him? Seeing that an attack is coming, Kiri told Dibo to stay back because she will continue the fight from here on. The big fireball was then sent towards the tired humans. But it was penetrated by another powerful fire attack, the revolver ability. The mage hob was surprised to see his most powerful spell get stopped like it was nothing. Also, the enemy spell was coming towards him. There was nothing he could do. And like it was nothing, the vortex-like fire attack passed through the enemy, ending the life of the one who had lived as a ruler above countless hobs. Kiri was surprised by what was happening. Elpom, the one who ended the battle, declared his satisfaction that he managed to arrive on time. Lonko was yawning out of boredom. He was saying that there were no news from inside the gate after 3 days. He thought that he could make some easy money with this guard job, but this is making him feel uneasy. He was thinking of rejecting this type of job from now on because it doesn't fit him. Then, he noticed that everybody became restless and started to wonder what is going on. The gate started to disintegrate all of a sudden, and then it collapsed, startling the guard of the raid. The huge gate closed, and the pillars were dropping to the ground. One of the adventurers was screaming for a healer to come and help. Lonko was running towards them and asked what is going on. The woman said that they have survivors, and seeing how the gate got destroyed, something must have went wrong with the subjugation. Lonko was surprised to see the state in which were the survivors, Elpom, Dibo and Kiri. The protagonist woke up suddenly. The leader of the raid guards was waiting for him to wake up. Elpom asked where is that place. Lonko stated that the man in front of him has to answer all his questions the best he can. Also, out of this gate subjugation, which was composed of only the aces of each merchant union, only the 3 of them survived. So what actually happened inside the gate? The protagonist, with a shaky voice, asked if they were truly the only ones. Then continued saying that he was already expecting that everyone else indeed died. Lonko then said that he should answer the questions properly, or he might lose the life he barely regained. Elpom stated that there was a demon inside the gate. And then asked to borrow a pen and a piece of paper so he can draw what he saw. He doesn't know the name of the monster, but he can draw it. When the guard saw the demon in the drawing, he got surprised, but now, it became easier to understand the situation that they were in at the moment. Sometime later, in a tent, a man screamed that this is outrageous. Inside, it was the representatives of the merchant unions who participated in the raid. One man was saying that it was a 100-man gate, but the 100 were elites among elites. Another said that it might have been a 100-man gate but it was still a red gate. Then another stated that he cannot believe that all those adventurers were annihilated by the monsters. Another said that realistically, they couldn't have been beaten in a red gate. Then, the representative of the Sky Trade Union, Toriel, stated that his cousin was also among the adventurers who entered the gate. Lonko said that he doesn't believe that the survivors made things up. The monster that killed almost everyone, the boss of the gate, is the one in the drawing. A green hob. Seeing this, a man stated that green hobs are known to use items. Then another one said that he heard that hobs are intelligent and if it's a colony of them, it's similar to fighting a human army. It certainly wasn't easy to deal with something like this. While stroking his mustache, a man stated that he refuses to accept the situation. It was Franco, the representative of the Goldrich Trade Union. He continued saying that it might have been difficult for others, but their Natasha sisters could have handled the situation. Lonko asked what is the man really saying. Franco asked if he is really clueless about it. Then said that it was a trolling. It doesn't make sense, unless there was a backstabber from the inside. There is no way for them to know the internal affairs of the gate, who knows whether it was accidental or premeditated. Also, the 3 that survived are apparently in the same affiliation. Mr. Abbeys intervened and said that it's enough nonsense. Now he's calling the Gaffer Merchant Guild traitors. The report said that the 3 became third circles and that's how they managed to survive. Franco then asked if the man in front of him is suggesting that the adventurers of his union are worse than the ones from Gaffer. Abbeys answered that he is not suggesting anything, the facts speak for themselves. Franco stated that if Gaffer had that many talented people, then they wouldn't have been the last of the 10 great trade unions. Abbeys answered that they are up and coming, and as time goes on, the ranking will change. Then they both started to laugh, but it was more of a forced laugh. Lonko wasn't enjoying the current situation. Franco then asked for a proof, if he is willing to defend his adventurers with such conviction. Abbeys answered that the first proof is the fact that no item was looted from the gate, so, there is no motive. A bit later, the 3 adventurers were released. Elpom stated that they will head back and then thanked Lonko for healing them, who wished them well. As they were leaving, the female raid guard asked if it's okay to just release them like this. The man answered that it's concluded, there is nothing else they can do. Some more time later, in the same forest, the 3 noticed a snail-looking creature. Kiri expressed her surprise to see that the little creature followed them all the way here. It was a cute snail with a pink flower on top of its shell. Back to when they were still inside the gate, the Cygnus Knight asked the protagonist why is he hesitating so much. They already eliminated the followers of the Black Mage, wiped out the Hob colony, and now all they have to do is to throw away all the items they obtained and then injure each other. Elpom didn't seem satisfied with the situation, it was because of the phoenix feathers, he didn't want it to part way with them. The protagonist did say to defeat the boss and drop the item, but the item that William had, Phoenix Feather, it's an item that increases the destructive power of fire spells by 30% by just having it, plus its effect stack, unlike some other items. The reason why in his previous life all the adventurers were wiped out completely is clearly because of this item, so he was thinking that it's absolutely necessary to bring it with him. Kiri stated that if they leave the gate with items they didn't report, they'll be suspected of trolling. And this is something that El Palm brought up in their previous discussions. She then said that he should stop his meaningless greed and do as they planned. Especially since they also found the escape gate. Then, they both noticed something that could solve his problem. The snail pet, unlike any other snail monster, it isn't aggressive and has a habit of finding items and collecting them. Its shell grows larger the more items it stores. Back to the present, the protagonist picked up the cute snail and it took out something out of its shell. It was 2 phoenix feathers. He managed to smuggle them out of the gate safely. Seeing this, Kiri said that he actually managed to bring that with him without getting caught, and then asked how did he figure out how to use the snail. El Palm answered that it's better to make anything rather than making a fuss about exiting the gate. She then said that she did everything he asked. Now what is the plan? He answered that she shouldn't worry, those bastards infiltrated the Cygnus Knights, so this information needs to be protected well, because if something goes wrong, they will just hide deeper. They probably made their move by now, so now it's time for them to wait and see. Jenny's trade union annihilated, Merdya Assembly and Dig Merchants annihilated, Goldrich, El Nido and Sky Trade Union were all eliminated. The woman said that the report stated that the subjugation failed because all the adventurers were killed by the boss monster and only 3 members of the Gaffer Merchants Union survived. Even if suspicions of trolling came up during the meeting, they were mostly directed towards Gaffer, rather than themselves. But there was no evidence and they were free of suspicion. Even if the mission failed, their identities weren't revealed. She then asked for permission to prepare for the next operation. The mysterious man then repeated the same words, "Not caught." The woman didn't know what he meant with that. And he continued saying that their plan was to eliminate all the parties and then proceed with the boss raid. In this case, the 3 survivors must have encountered William, but there were no mentions of this in the testimony made by the one called El Palm. She then stated that there is no reason for the survivors to lie, and they also distributed their members to each group in order to avoid attracting attention to their merchant group. The mysterious man asked, what if they realized that the mastermind of this isn't a merchant group, but the followers of the Black Magician? They probably are the only group that know of the return of the followers of the Black Magician, and they are planning to do something with this information. The woman protested that it cannot be the case, and if it is, then the situation is dangerous. They have to remove all their members from the other merchant groups. The man said that this is an invitation, which he finds very interesting, and shall accept. But he will have to change the stage, so that they will become the 101st guest of a certain gate that it's impossible to walk away from. It was hell. Dibo lived his life in absolute poverty, and on top of that, he had no choice but to see his younger sister suffer every day because of the black blood disease. When the only person he called family died, he couldn't even be there. A woman said that she's surprised to see that someone is still here. She then asked the helpless man if he needs some help, because he looks like he needs it. His answer wasn't a pleasant one, but that was his first encounter with Aaron. After killing a monster, Dibo declared that he is in the first place. Another adventurer answered that he was 30 seconds late, while another said that they found their dishwasher for the day and then said that Dibo's movements are way too flashy. Aaron declared that they finished here, then congratulated everyone and announced that they are moving on. Looking at Aaron sitting on a pile of monster corpses, Dibo was thinking that his values completely changed after spending a year with her. She is cold but warm, protects and clears the path before everyone else. Watching her from the side changed the way he is able to see the world, and of course, helping her became his goal. The white-haired adventurer was making fun of Dibo for having to wash the dishes for the entirety of their trip, and the hothead answered that his condition wasn't the best. The adventurer continued saying that Dibo proclaimed himself the disciple of Aaron, but he needs to work a lot harder to be acknowledged by her. The hothead said that they should stop talking about that. Aaron asked Shannon, another member of the party, if they are on the right track, and she answered that judging by the mark left by her brother, they are on the correct path. One of the party members stated that the atmosphere changed, while another was surprised to see that such a place existed under El Nath Mountains. At an earlier time, in another place, Shannon was saying that the deeper area of the Elnath Mountains is too dangerous for her to go alone, and also, no one else is willing to join her. That's why she is begging Aaron to help her find her brother. Aaron answered that the girl is asking the wrong person, she doesn't take individual requests, plus Shannon is a guide but her skills are too low as a third circle. There is no guarantee that her brother is still alive. Her suggestion was to find another adventurer. Dibo interfered and said that they are the girl's last hope, as there haven't been any adventurers exploring under the mountains since the last day. He then declared that he wants to help and that he'll take responsibility for Shannon, and begged Aaron to consider taking the request. Back to the exploration under the Elnath Mountains, the party was witnessing a place that looked like a battlefield from hell. Aaron noticed a corpse and asked if he is the brother, and Shannon answered that no. Aaron continued saying that it's a relief to hear that he is not the one who they are looking for, but how did he die? Because it doesn't look like monsters killed him. It looks like a week passed since he died, and then she realized that she knows who he might be. And then, something exploded out of the ground. It was something big. Dibo managed to pull Shannon out of the way, but didn't understood what is going on. It was a monster that just ambushed them. It was Zakam. Dibo rushed forward telling the girl to stay behind him. Then, Aaron attacked the hand of the monster, pushing it back. She screamed at Dibo that they are going to attack from the left, and the man rushed to help her, saying that they are going to finish this quickly. The other two adventurers started their attack as well. They were all fighting together to defeat the big rocky monster. Shannon wasn't powerful enough to join them, but then, she noticed something. It was the opening of another cave. The battle was over and Dibo, while tired, declared that their opponent was as though as people say. Then another adventurer asked where is Shannon and if anybody saw her. After looking around, all they could find was her hair clipper. Because it was in front of a cave opening, Dibo suspected that she went in and wondered, but why would she go in alone? Aaron said that they should stay alert because a powerful energy can be felt inside. One of the party members asked if they have to fight again with another monster inside the cave, and Aaron answered that she doesn't know, but she can feel something inside. Dibo declared that he will bring her back, as he was responsible for her safety, so everyone else should just wait for him. Aaron said that she will come with him, because whatever is inside, it will be a danger for Maple World and it's her job to stop it. After they all agreed to go together, they all entered the cave. Shannon was in front of a big ominous-looking tree, next to what seemed to be another person. The party noticed her and started to move towards the girl. They were happy to find her, but then, they noticed that she was next to a corpse. She answered that the deceased man is her brother. Aaron was suspicious of the situation. Dibo told Shannon to stay where she is and he will come and take her. While she was crying, the girl said that it's nice to see that he came for her, he is kind, but she cannot go back anymore. She then asked Dibo if he knows the meaning of the word Zakam. It means tree of the demon. Many consider the moving statue to be Zakam, but it's only an object that Zakam possesses. The huge tree behind her is the real Zakam, and now, all of them need to fight the real one. Dibo screamed at Shannon, asking what is she actually saying. Then Aaron interjected and thanked the girl for telling them, so now she will chop off that demonic tree. Then added that it's better for Shannon to leave as it's dangerous to stay in a battle zone, unless there is something she isn't done with, such as using her own brother as a sacrifice. The girl said that it already started, the moment they all stepped inside that place. Zakam is a being that possesses and what it can control, is not limited to a statue. At that moment, Dibo got stabbed from behind. Aaron was confused by what was happening. She was being attacked by another party member, the white-haired adventurer. Dibo looked behind to see who stabbed him and it was Miria, another member of their party. With a crazed look on her face, she declared that the man she stabbed is the one that killed her friends. Seeing everything that was happening, Shannon said that it's useless to reason with the possessed because all they see is the target of their revenge. And now, it's the time for the finale. After all, the show must finish at its best. A big monstrous statue was climbing out of the lava. The now crazed-looking Shannon declared that everything is for the black magician that she follows. The hurt Dibo, couldn't believe that someone like Miria could be possessed by this Zakam. Eren screamed at him to stop being such a baby and finish the adventurer that he knew as Miria, because she is not his friend anymore. Dibo knew it, but it was still too much for him. Eren activated Adrenaline Boost, and then used her ability Smash Swing to attack the big stone statue. Dibo was regretting the fact that he suggested coming to this place. He knew that he screwed up. He then got the courage and dashed towards his former friend, and thinking that all this is his fault, he struck the possessed adventurer. She then tried to reach her hand towards his face, but Dibo stopped hesitating and finished the job. Miria touched his face in a gentle way, and with her last breath thanked the man and asked him to look after Eren. That was more than his already hurt heart could handle. Eren was using all she had in order to fight with the real body of Zakam, the cursed tree. She slashed the main body and destroyed it, but the big statue was still able to attack, and now it was trying to grab the polearm master. It was trying to do it while Eren was in the air, but she was a true expert. She managed to avoid the attack, and then Dibo also joined and proposed to unite their strength in order to take the rock giant down. They both charged at it from different directions, slashing at the monster. But it wasn't enough. The statue immediately retaliated. Dibo was having a hard time being pushed away, when someone started to move towards him. It was the corrupted Shannon wielding a knife and declaring that she is offering her life to the Great One. But Eren ended her in one attack. She had enough playing games. All that was left for them was to destroy the statue. Dibo said that it won't be easy to break it. Then, he realized that something is wrong. He was feeling like his head was split in two. Eren noticed, and started to think that he might end up being possessed. Dibo started to scream that she has to kill him, before he is going to do something that he regrets, and she knew that she cannot hesitate and apologized for what is going to happen next. With what consciousness he had left, he started to think about how he got some hope after he got saved by his master, but after he brought everyone here, maybe it's better for him to die. He then noticed something. His sister's dead body was here. How could this have happened? Who brought and killed her here? He then noticed the person that ended the life of his sister. Eren told him to not worry, because she will end everything fast, but it was too late. In a demonic tone, the possessed Dibo screamed that he won't forgive the one that killed his sister. And he attacked with all his might, his master, who dodged the slash, but there was a second attack, his kick, which she was also able to defend. She then declared that his senses are too sharp for a possessed. Then, they engaged into a battle, where Dibo was pushing Eren backwards, but she was still the master and sent a slash towards him, destroying the hand of the statue that was protecting the possessed. That covered his vision, and Eren was able to move behind him. He noticed her, but it was too late. She used her ability Final Toss, freezing the area, and taking Dibo out of commission. She then immediately rushed to finish things off with the statue of Zakam. Declaring that she is now going to end the battle, used her ability Final Blow with the last of her strength, but Dibo was back, protecting the rock giant. He rushed towards her in order to stop that attack, but she couldn't stop. This was her last chance, so she apologized and proceeded, completely destroying the statue and ending the battle. A bit later, Dibo woke up and had no idea what was happening. He then heard the voice of Eren saying that he finally woke up. She then said that she thought that she will have to go without saying goodbye, but it's good that he is back to his senses. Dibo was confused. How could this have happened? Was it him that did this? He then asked her why didn't she kill him. She answered that they failed already 800 years ago, and she is not the person to stop the black magician, but Dibo has a great talent. He didn't want it to believe what was going on, and stated that even if he had an eternity, he couldn't compare with her. While smiling, she said that the Maple World is in his hands now, because she is sure that he will be able to do great, since he is her only disciple, and then she started to get sleepy and left the world of the living. That's how Eren the hero left the world. Dibo finally left that place to inform the other heroes of her death, but life without her felt weird. Life felt like hell, because he failed to protect the person that gave his life purpose, and also, he wasn't able to repent for his mistakes. He couldn't fulfill the request his dear friend and master asked of him in her last moments. He met his end in a meaningless way, full with regrets. Dibo woke up and was staring at the ceiling. His sister noticed that he is awake and said that he was sleep-talking. He answered that it was probably a dream but doesn't remember anything. Someone knocked on the door and the sister went to answer, and then said that it's someone looking for Dibo. He then went outside and saw a familiar face. It was El Palm, who said that their plans have been moved forward. Dibo said that he thought this to be their free day, and the protagonist answered that he had enough rest. Also, he needs to borrow some money, and Dibo refused. Abby's was repeating what he just heard. The Hobbs killed 97 people and the 3 of them survived because he raised his circle, and the protagonist agreed. Abby's felt that El Palm is planning something, then asked for more details about what happened, because he cannot give him their reward unless he gets more information, and he is sure that they need the money. The protagonist then stated that he seems to have made a mistake and pulled out of his bag a lot of money and declared that he wants to pay off his debt first. With this 2 million mesos, he settled the debt fully. Mr. Abby's was surprised to see that amount of money, since they didn't pay him that much, which means that he also made money on the side covertly. Plus, because of this timing, it means that he is trying to get the most out of this information. He then congratulated the former slave for being a free adventurer and then stated that now they should sign a new contract. Abby's asked how much El Palm wants for resign bonus, and the protagonist answered that he wants 50 million mesos. That surprised the merchant union representative. No one would pay that amount of money. It would be absurd to pay that money to a C-class adventurer. The protagonist declared that it's the end of their conversation if Abby's cannot fulfill his request, and then left. After exiting the union building, Dibo asked the protagonist how did it went. El Palm answered that Abby's rejected his sign-off bonus request, and Dibo asked how much did he ask, to which his teammate answered 50 million mesos. That surprised Dibo, calling the protagonist crazy for asking that much. El Palm answered that his request was sensible. Dibo continued by saying that his employer is always doing stuff without telling him anything, then asked why are they in that place, the slum ground. The hothead used to live here and tried his best to leave, and now, he might not live in the best location, but it's heaven compared to here. This place used to be the most vibrant area of Lease, but now it's just a bandit den. Might even be the worst place in Victoria Island. Then, all of a sudden, a man flew through a door and landed in the street, right in front of the 2 men. After that, they were surrounded by a bunch of people who didn't seem to have good intentions. The man that just flew through the door, whispered to himself that he thought that everything was going well. Dibo said that they should go around so they don't get involved in the fight. Then, the man got up and called the 2 men his big brothers and asked why are they late. The bastards in front of them called him a thief and started to beat him up, then begged to be helped. Dibo answered that he doesn't know him, then called him crazy. A balding man started to scream that their little brother stole his item and sold it off, and they won't let anyone leave unless they hand over 3 million mesos. The alleged thief asked if anybody saw him steal it and then insulted the balding man, who screamed that he will kill the thief. El Palm threw 3 million mesos at the balding man, who was surprised by what was going on. The protagonist stated that he will pay the money owed, and Dibo screamed why would he do that. Ignoring his teammate, told Ralph to follow them, who was really confused. Sometime later, Ralph asked if they're there to recruit him, and how much money are they going to offer him. The protagonist answered that they don't have any more money. He threw everything they had at the balding man. Ralph then asked who are they affiliated with, and El Palm answered that they don't have an affiliation. Ralph got annoyed and said that he has no reason to join them. Dibo also got annoyed and asked the alleged thief to pay back the money they paid earlier. Ralph answered that he never asked them to pay those money for him, they took that action without discussing with him. Also, as they were the ones that looked for him, then, they are aware of his skills and should pay accordingly. He will even give them a special discount, and have him in their party for only 3 million mesos. That statement annoyed Dibo even more, but then someone got their attention. She presented herself as Beiju, the representative of the Kenya Merchant Union, and asked to speak with El Palm, who answered the call, but knew that something was fishy. The representative continued by saying that it's a pleasure to meet him, and would have liked to have met him in a better setting, but it wasn't possible. The Kenya Merchant Union admires his skills, especially after he raided the 100-man gate, so without beating too much around the bush, she wanted to scout the protagonist's party. They will have to raid a gate as a test, but they will pay upfront 3 million mesos, and after, he will get a 50 million mesos sign-off bonus. That shocked Ralph. She then asked if they will join, and of course that Elpom accepted. Beiju said that the raid will be in 3 days and wished them luck, then left. The protagonist threw the money at Ralph, who was salivating at the sight. It was clear that he loved money more than anything. Elpom stated that the bonus was paid, the contract is for 1 year and the money lover will receive an additional 7 million after a successful raid. Dibo tried to protest because his employer was spending too much money, but his teammate ignored him and said that they have another place to go to. A bit later, Dibo was very disappointed and Kiri was feeling a bit awkward because of the situation. Dibo asked what is the loud girl doing there, and she answered that he should shut up and she is only there to fulfill a promise. After 3 days, the party had arrived in front of the Orange Gate. There were 5 parties, totaling up to 50 people, and Dibo asked if this is a good number of adventurers for a gate. Then Ralph stated that he is not satisfied with the large number of useless people in the raid, because they will eat up from his profit. Beiju presented herself and stated that as everyone was briefed, the gate is of orange level with a maximum entrance of 50 people and 3 scars, but with everyone's experience, it won't be a problem to clear the gate. Meanwhile, Elpom was thinking that the followers of the Black Magician, also known as Kanya Merchant Union, contacted him as expected, but it wasn't expected to bring him here. They already started to use this place earlier than expected, so although the timing is different, his plans won't have to change. Beiju continued saying that all must shoot a signal flare when the second gate is found, and Dibo asked his teammates what is that. Kiri explained that gates are divided into levels according to their color, and a second gate means that there will be another dungeon inside. Since the Orange Gate is a 2-gate layout, they will have to raid another dungeon within it, but the second gate will probably have a different terrain and monsters. Ralph stated that it's worrisome to have such green adventurers in the party and then told Elpom that he wants to make something clear. Even if he is the one that contracted him, doesn't mean that he will be the leader, because the leader needs to be determined based on skills. The protagonist recognized his greedy side and stated that they will decide the leader based on their contribution inside the gate. Ralph was thinking that he just tricked a newbie, and once he becomes the party leader, things will become very interesting, because he will make lots of money. Kiri announced that they will finally enter the gate and Dibo was happy that they will earn 50 million mesos by raiding the gate. Ralph started to make fun of Dibo for being only a 2-circle and while entering, the hothead challenged his new teammate to a fight. Ralph answered stated that he doesn't want to fight, he only wants to make money. Dibo continued cursing his teammate while passing through the gate, and once he was on the other side, it felt like he entered hell. The monsters were already on top of the adventurers, who were unable to handle the situation. One of the beasts, an evil eye, attacked Dibo, knocking him on the ground. The man was struggling to survive being eaten, and then, the monster tried to attack him with its sharp claws, but Ralph arrived right in time and kicked the evil eye away, smashing it right into a distant tree. He then said that they all should pay attention, and Kiri couldn't believe that they need to fight and asked if the gate could have opened in the middle of the monster's territory. A bunch of evil eyes rushed towards the adventurers, but Elpom also arrived and used his staple fire arrow and telekinesis attack in order to make quick work of them. He was thinking that this situation is different from what he experienced in his previous life. Kiri used her ability Rising Sun in order to attack the evil eyes, but they were easily dodging her attacks. No matter how fast or how many slashes, they were easily avoiding all her attacks. She was getting frustrated because she was unable to read their attacks. Then, one of them managed to land a tail attack on her, which threw her on the floor, making an opening for a couple of monsters to attack her. But in a flash, all of them were completely obliterated, leaving the blonde woman to wonder what happened. Dibo was also struggling to deal with one of the evil eyes, when someone came fast from behind him. The monster was hit with a really powerful attack, sending it flying into 100 bits. It was Ralph who saved Dibo, and was saying that he had to save him twice. He was really enjoying fighting, and saving his teammates was making him look good, so it didn't bother him much. Kiri was impressed by the new party member. She was admitting the fact that a 3-circle adventurer was on another level. Another monster tried to charge at Ralph, but it was dealt with faster than you could blink. While he was fighting a couple more evil eyes, he was thinking that the monster's movements are erratic, but that's all they have. He was also thinking that the two kids, Dibo and Kiri, are fine, while the other one, who controls fire arrows with telekinesis, is definitely talented. Even the Kanya Merchant Union recognized his skills. Then, another monster sneaked from behind him, managed to avoid the first attack and was going to attack, but it wasn't enough. Ralph was thinking that El Palm will be useful for him while punching the monster. Receiving a 50 million contract isn't something that anyone will get, plus, the Merchant Union in general seems to favor him, so he will get better offers. Ralph was becoming really excited because he was seeing himself sitting on a pile of money after taking leadership of this party. Kiri was surprised to see how her new teammate was able to handle so many monsters with such ease. Ralph, full of enthusiasm, was going to punch another frightened monster, but then, he was kicked aside, surprising the bare hand fighter. It was El Palm, the one who kicked him aside. Annoyed by the sudden attack, Ralph started to scream what is the problem and asked his party member if he wants to fight. The protagonist said that he doesn't need his teammates' thanks, who was getting even more confused, while was also about to get attacked by some monsters, who were completely wiped out by what seemed to be a volley of magic arrows. Realizing that he just escaped death, Ralph started to ask who dared to attack him. From far away, someone was watching the adventurers getting attacked and surrounded by the monsters. At the same time, he was also preparing to shoot the next volley of arrows. The protagonist was trying to pinpoint the location of the mysterious attacker, and felt the next attack incoming. At the same time, a couple of monsters were trying to attack El Palm. The multiple arrows pierced through the monsters, killing them, but the mysterious adventurer was surprised, because the protagonist used the monsters to hide from the attack, and then it realized that his opponent already casted the fire arrow while in hiding. He started to frantically look for the arrow, but it was already too late. The spell was right in front of him. Ralph was impressed by how the protagonist used the monsters to hide his attack from their mysterious opponent, a crazy idea and execution. Then, Dibo started to scream towards his employer to watch out. El Palm was surprised. Another arrow volley was inbound from behind him. The protagonist was slightly wounded after he managed to defend against the last attack and was thinking that he definitely hit his opponent. How can he attack from the opposite side? Kiri started to scream that the place they are in right now is too dangerous and they should retreat, and Ralph, while looking up, asked where to retreat. It was raining with magical arrows, there was nowhere to go. The adventurers were trying to escape from the magical arrow volley, but there were too many of them and plenty of people were killed or gravely wounded. Kiri used her ability Solar Slash to defend herself and another adventurers from the arrows, and then told the woman to run quickly towards the forest if she wants to live, but in the forest there were a lot of monsters waiting for them. They were surrounded. Then a huge fire vortex cut off right through the monsters. It was El Palm, who opened a path for the survivors to escape. Ralph announced that he will go ahead and use the path to escape the enemy, while Kiri was encouraging everyone to move and escape through the newly created path through the forest. The adventurers managed to escape the monsters, but the rain of arrows was following them. Everybody who couldn't run fast enough was dying, and Dibo told El Palm that they have to do something or they will all die. The protagonist shot a fire arrow in the direction from which the volley of arrows were coming from. Then told his teammate that he has a plan. The mysterious archer was thinking that he got detected immediately and that his boss, Sir Evoke, was right about El Palm, but now it's his end, time to say goodbye. He then launched lots of magical arrows towards his target, constantly moving in order to keep up with the target and avoid getting detected. He was also surprised by how fast the protagonist was moving. After all, he's just a mage. He then noticed that there were only 6 people in the group of adventurers, which means that one is missing, the one that uses the pole arm. At that moment, he felt an intense heat from behind. He turned around, but it was too late. The fire orb was too close. It was El Palm, without his cape or staff, using the flame orbs with his new item. He was thinking that this time he saw his enemy get hit. Dibo, who was impersonating his teammate, stopped running, and was happy to see that the plan to exchange disguises worked, and thanks to him stalling for time, they managed to defeat the enemy, but he didn't have time to finish that sentence because a magic arrow pierced through him. Kiri saw him drop to the ground. This was something unexpected. Palm was also surprised. Another arrow was also aimed towards him. Then, the arrow volley continued, and the adventurers were struggling to stay alive. Kiri grabbed Dibo and helped him run away from the attack, but she was also hit by an arrow in the leg and dropped to the ground. They were both hurt and unable to move further. There were more magic arrows coming right towards them, and they were unable to avoid getting hit. Then, Ralph came and grabbed them away from danger, telling them to stay focused. He also told them that it's troublesome having to play dad while he doesn't even have kids. While following them, the mysterious archer was thinking that they can run, but they won't be able to escape his reach in the end. He was preparing the next magical arrow volley, when he observed something. Ralph asked his teammates what is the plan, that they need to run this direction, and Dibo answered with a snarky attitude that he doesn't know, but they still should do what their leader said. They pushed through the bushes in front of them, and they realized why they were supposed to run towards that direction. It was the second gate. Ralph was surprised by the fact that Palm knew the location of the second gate. He was happy that he will live. The enemy archer is far away enough that they can get to the gate faster than the arrows. Dibo asked why are they going through the gate without the protagonist, and Ralph answered that this is their leader's intention. After all, he guided them here. He also told Dibo that they will wait inside the second dungeon for Palm, but there were arrows coming from in front of them. The party was stopped from advancing, and Ralph didn't understand what happened. How did the enemy get in front of them, especially in such a short amount of time? He couldn't even recover his senses, and the arrows were already in front of him. Luckily, he was saved by the protagonist by throwing the polearm. Dibo recognized his own polearm, and then noticed a tree trunk manipulated with telekinesis, coming right towards them. With no other choice, the hothead accepted his fate. The party was sent flying right into the second gate by Palm. They had no choice. After seeing the events that unfolded in front of him, the mysterious archer was thinking that his opponent is a truly crazy bastard. There was something moving fast in the forest, then a magic arrow pierced through it. It was a monster that died and fell to the ground. The mysterious archer was disappointed that he only caught an evil eye, and was wondering why isn't his opponent moving. Is he going to stay in hiding and stall for time while he looks for him? That is annoying, but no problem, two can play the same game, but at the end, Palm will be the one to lose. The mysterious adventurer remembered how Sir Evoke took him in, after a selection match where 300 assassins fought each other, until only 5 were left standing. The fight lasted for 7 days, and during this time, no one was able to find the archer, and that's why Sir Evoke gave him the title of Ghost. The mysterious archer saw something else and shot an arrow. It perfectly hit the target, but it was only another monster. He was disappointed because it wasn't his opponent. Then, a fire arrow passed right beside the place he was hiding, destroying a tree. He then relocated fast, thinking that his opponent is doing quite well trying to target him, but he should have thought twice before pulling a move like that because it can reveal your location. Then, the archer shot his own arrows towards the place from where he was attacked. The magic arrows hit the target, but there was nothing there. Then, another fire arrow showed up, surprising him. After the mysterious man escaped the blast, realized that his opponent is using telekinesis to make it impossible to guess where the arrows were shot from, a truly despicable trick. The man recovered fast and ran away, because there were more fire arrows following him. He then fired his own magic arrows. The enemy's arrows were stopped, but the explosion partially blocked his vision, which created an opening for another fire arrow to advance towards him. His reflexes were good and managed to fire his own arrow to block the opponent's one, but he was still caught in the explosion. He fell to the ground, only slightly hurt, but the situation was getting him frustrated. This Palm guy was making him put way too much effort. But this was making things interesting. He was also excited about their battle. In another part of the forest, the protagonist was thinking that it had gotten very quiet. He was wondering if his opponent decided to hide seriously, which is really annoying, but it's also impressive that he can hide his presence this well. In his previous life, there wasn't anyone that capable inside this gate. It's probably an assassin sent by Kanya, which means that he changed the future by getting involved in the 100-man gate. He then heard someone screaming for him to get out of hiding. That surprised El Palm, mainly because it was coming from the opposite direction he was expecting. The mysterious man was saying that they both know that nothing will change if he hides like a rat, they are only wasting time. He said that he heard rumors about the protagonist that he likes to challenge things head-on, but now he is only hiding. El Palm started to move towards his target thinking that it's impossible to move that far without leaking a hint of presence. Could it be a teleport ability? Might also be the quiver flow ability. The mysterious man detected his opponent's presence, and from behind the protagonist a volley of magic arrows was fired, surprising him. In another place, the party just entered the second dungeon. Dibo was disappointed because he had to abandon his employer, and Ralph said that there is no reason for him to whine like that, because it was El Palm who planned this, so he will probably be able to handle the mysterious archer, even if he is acting a bit too cocky. Dibo then realized that there were a bunch of human skeletons in the place they just arrived. He was asking why are there that many skeletons in a gate with only 3 scars. There are enough skeletons for 100 parties, not 3. Kiri realized that this was all a setup from Kanya Merchant Union. The sudden request, the trolling straight from the entry and the number of corpses that don't match the number of scars, must mean that Kanya is a follower of the Black Magician. Dibo was confused by that statement, but Kiri continued saying that they lured the adventurers that got in their way in this gate, but even sending an assassin, must mean that they took the bait as El Palm said. Ralph then said that it's an interesting story, but they should leave that for later, because right now, their host seems to be really angry. In front of them, a huge monster appeared, its presence was suffocating. Kiri, with a shaking voice asked if this is the boss monster of this gate. Ralph said that it's time for him to show his skills, and his teammates should consider themselves lucky. Because this is something that he doesn't show to anyone, and then activated an ability. At an earlier time, a couple of adventurers were asked how is Ralph as a person and Iburu, as well as Blonde adventurer answered that his personality is shit and that he is a trashy bastard. Jubra answered that he would do anything for money and that he is trash. Then, they were asked how is Ralph as an adventurer, and the balding man answered that he is pretty useful and that his skills are the best. Also, he is at the peak of 3rd circle as a healer. Ralph used the heal ability on his party members and they were feeling their wound get healed instantly. Kiri realized that the new member of the party wasn't a fighter but a healer, which means that he managed to kill all those monsters without using any skills. Ralph informed his teammates that now it's time for them to work for the reward they received because their opponent doesn't seem to have much patience. The boss monster attacked the party and the healer ran away saying that it's time for his teammates to show their skills. The giant's attack was powerful enough to destroy the ground, and the 2 adventurers were struggling to hold on, when the boss monster moved closer to eat them. He bit the boulder, destroying it, but Dibo managed to escape and was hanging onto one of the monster's fangs. The polearm user used the opportunity to struck his opponent in the eye with his weapon. Kiri also started to slash at their opponent, but the boss monster decided to retaliate and tried to grab Dibo. In that moment, Ralph came in like a flash, hurting the monster's hand and saving his teammate. But that wasn't all, he also kicked the beast right in the face, but that wasn't enough because the giant also tried to punch the man, which avoided the hit. But Kiri ended up being punched and sent flying. Ralph noticed, and while saying that his party members are very needy, he healed her, keeping her in the fight. Seeing this, Dibo was thinking that the new member is not only healing them from the rear, plus the timing of the heals is perfect, he can fight and also heal them the moment they are in danger. Ralph opened his satchel saying he forgot to tell them something. The first one is a free service, but from now on it will cost them. He took out a book and casted the ability Bless. Kiri was feeling a surge of power from within her. Ralph continued saying that it will cost them 100 mesos per casting, and the 2 teammates said that they don't need it if that is the case. The adventurers were sitting next to what seemed to be the defeated boss monster of the second dungeon. Kiri said that it was a hard fight and Ralph said that it was alright, but now it's time to tally up the pay for his support. Dibo complained about the smell and said that he will end the monster's life soon. Then, the giant reattached his severed hand using ice, while the party was unable to understand what is happening. The monsters was severely hurt, but it started to get up. He patched up his wounds with ice and was ready for another round of fighting. In the first dungeon, the protagonist was running away from lots of arrows that were destroying everything in their way. He was thinking that something feels off because he can't detect the location from where the arrows are fired. A third circle can use quiver flow as a teleportation skill, but that ability only returns the user to a set point. But only a point can be set, so it should be impossible for him to move like he is doing. The mysterious archer started to scream that it's useless to run away, he is falling asleep because his opponent is just too slow. Palm launched a fire orb towards in the direction of his chaser. The mysterious man saw that the attack was way out of target and asked, what is he doing? That's just a waste of skills. He will end up suffering from mana shock if he continues wasting attacks like that. The archer was bouncing between trees, chasing his target, and realized that his opponent is trying to create a distraction so he can run towards the second gate, but it's not going to work. The protagonist, who started to suffer from mana shock, realized that it's useless to fight a battle of attrition against an enemy who cannot even detect. If he continues like that, the battle will end with him losing. He then grabbed a potion from his satchel and drank it, thinking that he has to take some risks in order to turn things around. There was a magical arrow volley coming straight towards him, but he used his ability Flame Orb and the arrows were stopped. The mysterious man, jumping out of the way from the fire attack, and was saying that it's foolish to use his skills like that. He then noticed something that he didn't expect. There were 6 fire arrows coming towards him. The archer was wondering if his opponent is trying to sacrifice himself to win, because he is using the highest grade skill a third circle can cast during an mana shock. Palm was struggling trying to manipulate all the fire arrows, and was thinking that he might know the archer's secret, but he will have to force himself to drag it out. The fire arrows were destroying everything in their way, and the mysterious adventurer noticed that the arrows don't have a target, which means that the protagonist lost his mind. Palm launched another flame orb to chase his opponent, who didn't have a hard time avoiding the fire ability. He was really nimble and it was easy for him to dodge almost any attack. The protagonist was really pushing himself, but he still had more to show. The forest was being leveled by the multiple fire-type abilities being launched all over the place. Palm was really pushing himself to launch as many attacks as possible, and the mysterious archer was thinking that his opponent is foolish because such attacks will never hit him. His fate is already decided, he will die feeling the pain of his body being torn apart by the mana shock. And symptoms of mana shock were showing up more and more often, and what the mysterious man was thinking was proving to become reality. But Palm wasn't stopping. The entire forest was being engulfed in fire and he wasn't stopping. He kept launching more and more fire abilities. The mysterious man finally realized the entire area was on fire. This was the plan of his opponent from the very beginning. This is really dangerous. If he's not careful, he will end up burned alive. He then noticed an open field and decided to go there so he can escape from the flames. But it looked suspicious, an open field right when he needed to escape from the burning forest. So he rushed the opposite direction, and then he realized the true plan behind the forest fire when he saw his brother. He screamed at him to go back because it's a trap. The other brother was surprised. What is he doing there? At that moment, Palm used his telekinesis and hit one of the brothers with a big boulder. The other brother fired an arrow and destroyed the boulder, but now, the other mysterious archer was free falling. The protagonist jumped through the fire towards his opponent that just fell, with his staff, that was used as a weapon, declaring that he is the first to fall. But the archer wasn't going down without a fight. He managed to parry the attack with his bow. He then used the opening created by his parry to kick his opponent, but he missed, and Palm was thinking that he needs to finish this quickly because he can barely stand. The protagonist then broke the bow, and the mysterious archer was falling to the ground, and got kicked hard enough to go flying. Palm wanted to use this momentum to continue attacking because his opponent was hurt, but the other archer fired a bunch of arrows, forcing his opponent to step back. He then screamed to his brother, Nier, to get up. Because the protagonist doesn't have enough mana to use offensive magic, they can end this here. But there was a knife controlled by telekinesis coming towards him. He managed to dodge it, but this was unexpected. He realized that Elpom can still use telekinesis because it doesn't drain much mana. Nier, the bother that got his bow destroyed, grabbed his knife and attacked the protagonist, but the mage wasn't an easy target. He managed to defend every attack with his staff. The other mysterious man was trying to stop the knife with his arrows, but it wasn't that easy. He was still a third circle adventurer, so he managed to hit it, stopping the telekinesis, and declaring that he had enough with little tricks, tried to shoot more arrows, but he was hit with a bunch of rocks, also controlled with telekinesis. At the same time, Elpom was still fighting with the other brother, Nier, who couldn't believe that a magician is such a good melee fighter. He then got kicked in the ribs, and the protagonist was thinking that he cannot give them any room to counterattack. So he grabbed his knife again with telekinesis and started to harass the archer with it. Elpom managed to disarm Nier with his staff and tried to finish the job. Then, he was pierced in the arm with a normal arrow. Nier took advantage of the opening and kicked his opponent away, declaring that his brother is the best. The protagonist dropped his staff and Nier grabbed his knife and rushed towards his hurt opponent to end the battle. He started to ask what can Elpom do with only one arm, but surprisingly, one arm was enough to defend from all his attacks. Nier lost again his knife. The mage was much better at hand-to-hand combat. He grabbed his knife, but he also had his arm caught. With one arm, the protagonist was able to overpower his opponent and Nier was screaming to let him go. But Elpom fired a flame orb right on his position, scaring his enemy. The mysterious archer was left watching from afar how both his brother and opponent got blown up by the fire ability. That explosion sent Nier flying, a tree from the burning forest finally stopping him. The forceful impact left him without air, plus, all the smoke in the hellish forest was making it impossible to breathe. He knew that at this rate, he might end up dying. The other bother was surprised by what he was seeing. The area right next to him was covered by a dome that was trapping all the smoke inside. Nier started to look for his brother, but the visibility was low because of the smoke. He was running through the burning forest. Then, Elpom ambushed him through the thick smoke. The protagonist was using an arrow as a weapon and Nier defended himself with his coat. Screaming that he is going to kill him, the archer attacked the mage with his knife. One of them died. The mysterious man noticed that the dome was opening, and rushed in looking for his brother and wondering what happened inside. He then noticed his brother on the ground, heavily hurt. He grabbed him and asked if he is okay, but he didn't have time for that. They dragged the battle for too long. They need to grab the Phoenix Fathers and leave. But Nier's body was a couple of feet further away. The mysterious archer noticed it, but it was too late. Elpom was already one step ahead. The fight was finally over. The protagonist reached his limit. It was time for him to rest, even if the entire forest was still burning. Inside the second dungeon, the party was still fighting to defeat the boss monster. Dibo was punched away, and then the monster attacked again and the polearm user was sent flying along with a bunch of ice and snow. He was struggling to fight the giant. It felt like it was impossible to win. The boss monster was towering over the man. It then went for another punch against the helpless adventurer, but Ralph showed up from behind, avoided the attack of the beast and saying that those attacks are too slow, punched his opponent right in the face. But that did no damage. The ice was too tough. The monster took advantage of the situation and caught the man, who was now struggling to survive from being crushed. Kiri showed up and cut Ralph free from the beast's hold, and stated that with this, she paid off for the help he offered her. Then, they both jumped off, but the giant tried to punch them. Fortunately, it missed. It then started to chase the two adventurers. The beast jumped into the air, and then slammed into the ground with all its weight. Ralph casted heal on himself and his teammates, and all of them were ready to fight again with the boss monster. Dibo asked if his new teammate managed to find a way to defeat their opponent and Ralph answered that there is something on its back. Dibo was confused about where exactly on its back. After all, this is a giant. Where exactly on its back? Ralph said that his teammate needs to shut up and distract the enemy, so he can sneak behind it and attack the weak point. Dibo blocked an attack from the boss monster and screamed at his teammates to quickly take advantage. Ralph and Kiri were approaching from behind the beast, but it noticed them and swatted them away. Dibo decided to try and climb up the monster thinking that their opponent is quite smart, But it wasn't that easy. He was struggling to avoid the giant's attacks, when he got punched hard and sent straight into the ground. The boss monster then went to step on its opponent and Kiri was screaming at Ralph to heal their hurt party member. But it was too late, the giant stomped onto the man. Ralph was having a hard time recovering from the last hit. He then announced that he has only 4 heals left, so they should do their best to dodge. The monster started running towards them and Ralph announced that he will look for an opening. The beast was too strong, it caught up to Kiri and hit her away. Ralph healed her while saying that he told her to not get hit and she immediately got hit. She got healed but it was for nothing because she had fainted. The giant was chasing Ralph, trying to also hit him. At the same time, Dibo was hurt badly, looking to be knocked out. He was remembering a previous discussion with Elpom about circling up. The protagonist was saying that his teammate already has enough experience to reach second circle, so it would be best if could do it soon. Dibo asked if it's something that he could do just because he wanted to. Elpom answered that it depends from person to person, he cannot just tell him how to do it, you have to find the feeling yourself. Dibo didn't know what to do, or where to start from. The protagonist continued saying that he could start from his understanding of mana, or knowledge about personal skills, or even an unforgettable memory. The monster was distracted by an explosion behind him, it was Dibo that woke up. He was speeding towards the boss monster that was trying to stop him. Dibo used his ability and cut off one of the beast's arms. Ralph was surprised to see his teammate slash in one go the arm, he then noticed the 2 circles. Dibo reached 2 circles and now he was a lot more powerful than before. He managed to climb up the giant and slash one of his eyes, he then managed to get behind it, where the weakness was located, and hit the sword, driving it deeper in the monster's back, but it wasn't enough to reach the core. The boss monster realized what the adventurer is trying to do, and jumped on his back, crushing his opponent under its weight. Ralph showed up to help, congratulating his party member, and then healed him, saying that he needs to get up. Dibo started slashing at the tough ice so he can get out. The giant got out of the way, and Dibo was released, but immediately after the monster struck the adventurer, pushing him back. But Dibo was doing his best to resist, and Ralph healed him as fast as he could. But the healer got caught by the boss monster, and while saying that the beast is worrying about the wrong person, he healed his teammate again. Dibo got behind the giant again, where the weakness was located. And with a scream, hit the sword again and the core was damaged. Dibo wanted to go for another swing, but the beast started shaking and he lost his balance, and then, he was punched into the ground. Dibo woke up from his frenzy, and didn't know what was going on. He saw that Ralph was next to him and asked what is happening, but his teammate was knocked out. The giant started to run away, and the ice that was keeping his body together started to disintegrate. His arm fell off, and after, more ice pieces started to come off, then he lost his ice foot and fell to the ground. He knew that this is the end but was desperately trying to hold on to his life. Dibo was looking from afar as the boss monster was slowly dying. Sometime later Kiri woke up, and Dibo noticed. She was surprised that they are all still alive and asked what happened to the monster. He answered that she can check for herself. He also said that he got hungry and tried to eat its meat, but it was too tough. She appreciated his courage and then asked if he was waiting for them to wake up. Dibo answered that he didn't really had a choice because there doesn't seem to be an escape gate. The weather is also bad, so resting could do only good. Plus, Ralph's condition looks pretty bad. So he was thinking of going to scout only after the weather gets better. After the weather got better, he told Kiri that she should rest some more because he will go scouting. The wind was still pretty harsh, but the adventurer couldn't be stopped by this much. He was thinking that the day is already over, then, he started to wonder if his employer is doing well. He heard something from behind, it was a monster, something to be expected. He was thinking that these bastards keep him from exploring more. He returned to their cave and Kiri woke up and asked if he found the exit. When she saw him, she got startled and asked what happened to him. Dibo answered that he encountered some annoyances that he took care of. She was surprised to hear that there were still monsters left and offered to come and help him during exploration. He answered that someone needs to take care of their dying teammate, they cannot just abandon him. She insisted that this is something that it should be done together, and Dibo refused, saying that it's better if only person keeps doing the scouting. There is no reason for Kiri to waste her strength, it's better if she rests. Looking at him, she was thinking that the idiot is trying to play cool, but he is pushing himself. The next day, Dibo was fighting a group of monsters. He was being pushed on the edge of the cliff. The monsters had surrounded him, and there was nowhere else to go. He was thinking that it's too cold to fight, then all of the monsters rushed towards him. One of them grabbed onto him and jumped off the cliff. They hit the ground really hard. Dibo survived and said that this was a dangerous thing to do, and he thought that he would really die this time. He then noticed a person, but taking a better look, realized that it was a corpse. It didn't seem to have died a long time ago, but taking a closer look, Dibo found a letter. It had a bunch of writing in the front. It was saying that this is for the person who finds him to read. Also, even if it's not much, he offers as a reward the gloves that he is wearing, they will be of great help for a warrior. He also fell into Kanya's trap with his comrades, who died fighting the snow yeti. He did manage to find the escape gate, but it's a special gate which can only be activated if the boss monster is defeated. He drew a map on the letter and hopes that this will help someone someday, and that person will be able to deliver this letter. Dibo created a grave for the dead person, returned to the cave to inform his teammates that he managed to find the gate, and brought them with him in order to finally leave this place. Kiri activated the gate, and they all headed in. They have returned to the first dungeon, and Dibo asked what are they going to do now. Kiri answered that they aren't in their best condition, so they should first organize a bit. Then, they were interrupted by a masked man saying that they did consider this as a possibility. They followed by asking if Ghost truly died. Dibo was thinking that these people are probably from Kanya, but in his current state, he cannot fight. The masked man then said that they don't need to worry because they will finish fast, and they attacked. Kiri defended against the first attacker, but another one was using poison knives, and stabbed her in the leg, causing a lot of pain. Dibo was about to be attacked by another one of the masked men, when a fire arrow shot straight through the attacker. Then another fire arrow killed the masked man that attacked Kiri. The masked adventurers were being slaughtered by fire arrows, none of them managed to survive. The two party members knew only one person that can do something like that, and Dibo stated he didn't want to say it, but he has to, and El Palm, their savior, asked if he wanted to see him that badly. Dibo answered that yes, they can leave it at that. But, since he was late, he should buy them some beers. Thank you for watching the first 6 parts of the series The Last Adventurer. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed it. I will take a break from this series in order to explore others. Let me know if you want to see more episodes of this or other series, in order to decide the length of the break. Goodbye.